Greatness doesn't just happen. It is created one step at a time. A skyscraper starts with one plan. A masterpiece starts with one simple brushstroke. And a student fully prepared to lead and serve begins with one community pulling together for the benefit of all. One teacher can inspire. One caring adult can support. One idea can change everything. Over the next 5 years, Columbus City Schools is embarking on a path guided by our students and their families.
To our students, you are the reason that we're doing all of this important work. It is important for us that you are successful. Now we're more intentional. Now we're focusing on the priorities that we believe are important for our students right now. Our portrait of a graduate is Columbus City Schools community coming together, stating that these are our hopes and dreams and aspirations for our students. We must put our students out front. They can do it. They have demonstrated across our district and other places that if you provide for them the environment for them to thrive, they can do the unimaginable. Now we have 4 priorities that we are focused on. Columbus City Schools will be whole child focused. And what that means is that we will focus not only just the academic, but also social and emotional well-being of our students. Equitable opportunities for all students in Columbus City Schools means that every student, regardless of your background, will have an opportunity to be successful. Strong learning communities in every region means regardless of where our students go, we have to make sure that our students are learning in 21st century facilities. Authentic engagement is so important. Why? Because we want to make sure that everyone has a voice and that we're intentional of making sure that we are including all stakeholders. In order for these 4 priorities to be realized, it is important that we have a foundational system of support. So there is a role for every one of our employees to play to ensure that we have 21st century classrooms, our students are leading the way, and that portrait of a graduate is realized.
The past 2 years have been incredibly challenging, but we know that as one community, working towards one goal, that we are up to the task at hand. Every journey begins with one step, and our journey begins today.
So we're in this together. Be committed to the next steps with us. We're going to be committed, we're going to be transparent, but together we can be transformational.
You are far smarter than I was when I was your age, and you will be far smarter than any of us ever will be. And this is because your generation is so innovative, so creative, and you understand your role and your civic duty in making our society better.
senior to sophomore will definitely benefit you in the future, and I am so happy that you guys chose to take your senior year to pack it on with so many college courses. I know it was hard, and you're probably so glad that it's over, but I promise you it was worth it. I was a part of Ohio State's academy, and whenever I had an issue, Miss Raspberry was my first person that I went to.
You know, she is really an amazing person, and she is very passionate about what she does. I couldn't ask for a better support system in this program, and I'm just very thankful for the program and thankful for you too. Thank you.
But most importantly, I now understand that taking a course shouldn't just be about making the A's, but actually learning to love like whatever course you're taking, because that will really pull you through even in the times you don't want to study, or like, I really like this class, so I'm just gonna do it anyways.
I actually found myself becoming really complacent in high school classes. It was really easy, there was no studying, it was just do the work and you get an A. So I'm really grateful for this program to allow me to challenge myself and kind of gain back my drive that I had lost and get me to who I am today.
Exposure changes expectations, but experiences changes lives. We always have to make sure that we give our students more and more experiences, taking them onto college campuses. They can do it. Just listen, we have students that are going to be the next scientists, the doctors, the lawyers. You are the next generation that's going to make America great and greater. It's because of you and your foundations that you have here at Columbus City Schools and at the post-secondary schools that you've attended.
evening, everyone. I am calling our December 6th regular business meeting to order for the Columbus Board of Education. Hello, Mr. Roush.
Hello.
Will you please call the roll?
President Adair.
Present.
Ms. Beckerly.
Present.
Mr. Brown.
Present.
Mr. Cole.
I am here.
Dr. Pierce. Vice President Reyes.
Here.
And Ms. Vera. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Will you all please stand and join me in the pledge?
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Because our treasurer is not here, our first order of business is to appoint a treasurer pro tempore. And Mr. Brown, you have the motion.
Thank you. Whereas Revised Code Section 331323 requires the board, when the treasurer is absent from any meeting of the board, to choose one of their members to serve in the treasurer's place pro tem. And whereas Mr. Behork, treasurer, is absent from this meeting, now therefore let it be resolved that the board appoint Vice President Ramona Reyes to serve as treasurer pro tem in the absence of the treasurer for the duration of this meeting and this meeting only.
Put a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
President Adair.
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Cole.
Yes.
Vice President Reyes.
Yes.
Ms. Vera. Yes. Motion carried.
Thank you. On this evening's agenda, we have no one here signed up to talk on agenda items. We are expecting a report from our superintendent, no report from our internal auditor or treasurer. We have several items on board matters. We have two public hearings on reemployment of retired employees. We have our consent agenda. We have no speakers on non-agenda items, and we have an executive session, and then we will adjourn. Is there a motion to approve our agenda?
So moved. Second.
Are there any additions, changes to the agenda? Seeing none, and without objection, the agenda has been approved. Turn it over to the superintendent. Good evening, Madam Superintendent.
Good evening, President Adair and everyone. Tonight, I'd like to provide you with updates on 5 topics. Measles in Columbus, our upcoming partnership convocation, exciting partnerships with COSI and the Columbus crew, an update on our Pathway Express, and finally, a collaboration with our transportation and engagement teams. So let's start with the measles. As you may be aware, Columbus Public Health is investigating confirmed cases of measles at several local public places around the city. Well, let me stress that Columbus City Schools does not currently have any reported cases of students with measles in the district. In part, that's because the measles, mumps, rubella, or MMR, vaccine is one of our school-required vaccines. And children who are not vaccinated may be excluded from school if there is a case at their school. They may also be excluded from school if they are exposed to measles in the community. For families who are unsure of their child's vaccination status, they can contact a school nurse at their child's school. We also have more information on the CCS website, including an FAQ. Families can also reach directly to our partners at Columbus Public Health at columbus.gov/measles or call 614-645-1519. Next, we're looking forward to celebrating all of our partners at our Power of One Partnership Convocation tomorrow morning at Columbus State Community College. I'm excited to say that we have more than 350 participants registered to attend. Like I've said many times before, we are successful as a district because of our partnerships. The collective impact they have on our student experience and student achievement is immeasurable. Their commitment to our students exemplifies what one community can accomplish when we work together as the power of one. So tomorrow, we will thank and honor our partners, including a highlight of our promise to our CCS students, the Columbus
promise. Speaking of powerful partnerships, I'm also excited about the relaunch this week of a collaboration with our friends at COSI. Thanks to the generosity of the Robert Weiler Company, COSI is proudly offering the gift of a complimentary 1-year COSI family membership to all of our 5th grade students and their families. That's more than 3,000 5th graders who will be able to take their entire family to COSI at no cost anytime they want over the next year. Our family ambassadors started sharing that information with all of our 5th grade families this week. Plus, to really kick off this amazing opportunity, the COSI team members have been celebrating the school day with special morning clap-ins and afternoon clap-outs at several of our elementary schools this week, with the message that science is fun for everyone. They've been cheering on our students as they begin and end their day of learning and showcasing some quick science fun that sparks those young minds. Thank you to COSI, and especially thank you to Robert Weiler and the Weiler family. Next, I want to share about an opportunity we have with another one of our partners this morning, the Columbus Crew. And I can highlight my scarf while I do this announcement. To celebrate the announcement of their new head coach. He comes from Montreal to Columbus. Because of his French connection, more than a dozen of our 4th and 5th graders from Eco Kenwood were invited to join in the celebration, and 2 of our students joined him on stage to officially welcome the coach to Columbus, all spoken in French. The crew has been an amazing partner in our Stay in the Game initiative around attendance and our efforts to decrease chronic absenteeism. We are seeing improvements thanks to this intentional focus on attendance and to the overall strategies in place. And today was a good reminder of that work. Another good reminder, we are excited about our new Pathway Express location for December. This month, Pathway Express takes us to the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium with free admission every day throughout the month for a celebration of holiday magic. Families are also invited to join us for our monthly Family and Community Resource Day on Saturday, December 10th from 6 to 8 p.m. This event will feature free admissions to Wild Lights, free winter coats for students, holiday-themed giveaways, and new book bundles, and a lot more. One important thing to note is that families must pre-register before their visit. We sent emails last week with registration information, and we will be sending out reminder emails as well. So if families haven't already, they'll want to ensure all contact information is up to date in the parent portal so they can receive the registration link. We look forward to seeing everyone at the zoo on Saturday. And finally, I would like to devote the rest of my report to talk about transportation. As each of you know, our transportation team is undertaking an unprecedented mid-year action to update all bus routes. This means that nearly every student who currently receives yellow bus transportation in Columbus, that's about 38,000 CCS and charter non-public students, will see a change in their route. It could be a minor change or it could be a major change as we try to get more students on fewer buses and provide a more reliable service. Our transportation team has been using the Versatron's software to review and reroute all of our trips, and they have already seen promising results, reducing the number of daily routes by roughly 100 or more. We're cautiously optimistic that this significant reduction will improve the team's ability to manage and cover every route each day. Still, I know that this board has been concerned about how we're communicating and engaging with our families about these changes and about our efforts to improve bus reliability. And that's why our engagement team is partnering with the transportation team to help make sure our families understand what to expect when all of these new routes go into effect after winter break. I've asked our Executive Director of Family and Student Engagement, Scott Varner, to present tonight about this collaboration. He's been doing an incredible job communicating the plans to our principals and engaging with our families about the changes. So now I'll hand it over to Scott Varner. Hi, Scott.
Good evening, President Adair, Vice President Reyes, members of the board, friends. It's nice to be in front of you. It's been a while. Thank you for this opportunity to share more about this collaboration between the engagement team and the transportation team. As you heard Dr. Dixon say, we wanted to be very intentional about reaching out to our families who, as you probably have heard, have been a little frustrated over these past several months as we've worked through these unprecedented transportation challenges. Again, as you all know, we're undertaking this unprecedented mid-year action to update all bus routes across the city. This means that nearly every student who currently receives yellow bus transportation in Columbus, that is our Columbus City School students and our charter and non-public students, will likely have a new bus driver or a new route number or a new pickup time or a new drop-off time or a new bus location. And as you heard, it may be one of these items, it may be many of them, it may be a minor change, it may be just, or it may be a major change. Parents are receiving this new information in the mail as we speak. So right now, parents are receiving this information as part of our larger outreach efforts. Now, as many of you know, as part of our authentic engagement commitment and our strategy, we always talk about engaging with grace, which is recognizing that not every family hears our message the first few times that we share it. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to share a little information on behalf of our transportation team, our partners, about the changes that are coming, perhaps told in a little different way, and then I'll share more about this commitment to communication and engagement as part of what we've called our Transportation Reliability Improvement Measures. Let me just remind everyone that all of this information we're about to share is on the Columbus City Schools website. You can't miss it on the homepage. Not only is there a big button that says bus routes, but it's also our alert message in yellow at the top of the page. And as you're about to hear, families will receive their student-specific information at least 6 times over the month leading up to this major change, as well as dozens of general reminders about our outreach. So, looking at this transportation reliability improvement measures, you all know that the unprecedented challenges that we face this school year on busing, the nationwide bus driver shortage being top on that list, and I know you've heard from our families, who many of which were frustrated by simply just not knowing if their student's bus was going to be late or maybe just not show up. So that's why the operations team really did look to implement these unprecedented measures to improve our transportation reliability. It's about trying to make sure that every student has a bus each morning and afternoon to safely get to school and back home. And it begins, as Dr. Dixon said, with our transportation shift in the routing software, which has given our routing experts an easier ability to update bus routes, to add, remove riders, adjust the number of routes to better match the number of available drivers. Also, as part of this, recognizing the need to address the crisis, our district's union partners also agreed to an unprecedented mid-year reassignment of drivers, bus drivers who typically bid on a route at the beginning of the year and keep it all year long. The transportation team has done all of its reviews, has completed all of the new bus routes, the schedules, the assignments, and that information is currently being shared with our parents and families, with our school staff, including our ESL and special education teams, as well as many of our community partners and stakeholders. Now, a lot of credit goes to the transportation team. It's early, and again, as Dr. Dixon shared, this shift has allowed our routers to reduce the number of daily routes by as many as 100 or more, which, as the transportation team has said, should be more manageable number given our current number of bus drivers. But as they work to reduce the number of routes needed each day, there is a ripple effect that our parents need to be aware of that can shift the timing of bus routes, maybe the length of a bus route. Remember, we're trying to get more students on fewer buses and provide more reliable services so there's less frustration from our families. Which is why next, as part of these transportation reliability improvement measures, includes a commitment to communications, to increasing family notification. We recognize that our students, our parents, our families, our school staff, our stakeholders, they were often most frustrated when they just didn't know if the bus was going to show up that day. That's why our transportation team is taking new steps to improve how we engage and notify everyone about changes. So over the past 2 weeks and throughout the coming month, the district is dedicating significant time and resources to providing parents and families, school staff, and our stakeholders with information. That includes a special written notification that was sent by mail to the families of all of our bus riders. That's roughly 38,000 pieces of mail that went out, and they began hitting mailboxes on Friday. Our transportation call center is also very active, and even though our schools will be closed, the transportation call center will be open for most of winter break to help answer families' questions. And if I could, a quick shameless plug, the number for the transportation call center is 614-365-5074. Now, in just a moment, I'm going to talk more about the additional ways families are going to receive information, either by phone, in their child's backpack, through text, through email. But let me also share about the other part of this engagement and communication effort, and that's the implementation of Easy District. This is a direct communication tool used by our transportation team that can send emails and text messages directly to parents if their child's bus is going to be late or if the route is uncovered. Here's important. There is no sign-up needed. Parents do not have to sign up for this. The Easy District tool actually uses the information that's in our parent portal on Infinite Campus to send these messages out to families, which is why it is very important that our parents take time to make sure that their information is up to date, including an email address that they actually check and a phone number that is a cell phone number that can receive texts. And actually, the transportation team has been using Easy District over the last several weeks with some success, parents getting to know when buses are late. And so what's great about this system is it not only works with our students, but it also works with our charter and non-public families as well, which is an important reason to use this tool. So the important parts of that plan have been about shifting our routing and increasing our engagement. But there are other two important measures that I think is important to share real quick for those that are paying a little closer attention to our transportation efforts. The third is the challenge of working with our charter and non-public partners. Our district takes seriously that state-mandated responsibility to transport all students, even if they don't attend Columbus City Schools. And the transportation team is trying to work collaboratively with our charter and non-public school partners to resolve that disconnect, including efforts to identify future staff that would be specifically assigned to working with those charter and non-public partners. The same route information that's currently being shared with all of our principals about the new routes is also being shared with the administrators at all of those charter and non-public schools. So we're asking for their support in getting this information out to their families as well. But as you know, our transportation team can't mandate changes to the start or end times of our charter and non-public partners. But we continue to talk with those schools, look for ways in which maybe their adjustments could benefit both sides in order to better match bus driver availability. The other part of this plan is our ongoing search for bus drivers and for bus driver alternatives. The district is continually proactively recruiting drivers at all experience levels. Our job fair is virtually around the clock these days, that interested candidates can go online 24/7 and apply to be a bus driver. But the transportation team is also working with those charter non-publics to encourage them to help us find drivers, drivers who could be assigned to transport those students, pending any of the labor agreement process. The transportation team will also continue to use those outside transportation agencies that they've contracted with, who have been very helpful in covering the routes that sometimes are increasingly difficult for our buses to cover. And our district leaders will continue to have conversations and seek additional support and relief from our partners at the state and our legislative leaders, knowing that we can't resolve the impacts of a national crisis on our own. So those were the elements, the 4 elements of the transportation reliability improvement measures. I just want to make sure that everyone had a chance to kind of see the full picture of what we're doing and why. But let me shift as to why the Director of Engagement is standing here talking about transportation, and that's our family engagement strategy. So since returning from Wellness Week, I actually started right before we went on break for Thanksgiving, we have been devoting a lot of energy and resources to informing and engaging our families. I have to give a thank you to Jacqueline Bryant and our communications team. She and I have been working very closely as we've worked to inform and engage our families. Our focus right now is at the school level. So the transportation team is in the process of sending to all of our principals a full rundown of the new routes of all the bus riders in their schools. We've encouraged our principals then to use this information and all the different communication and engagement tools they have at hand at the school level to share this information over these 2 or 3 weeks. So this includes adding information about the route change to if they send out a weekly auto dial or a weekly message, encouraging our family ambassadors to talk about the changes in any of the SMORE newsletters that they're sending out every couple of weeks, encouraging our families to watch the recordings of our virtual family engagement sessions. We've had 2 of them now on transportation to try to help them best understand what to expect. I'm going to show it to you in just a minute, but using a special bus change flyer that we created where they can actually, a person at the school can write out the student-specific routes and then stick that in the backpack of the student and send it home. We've enlisted the help of instructional aides to call the homes of our bus riders and share the student-specific information and make repeat calls if necessary if they can't get a live person. We're also encouraging school staff to read about those transportation reliability improvement measures I just shared with you on our website so that they too, they're on the front lines of talking with our parents and families every day so that they too understand what families can expect and what changes are being made and why. And then of course we have our presentation tonight to also make sure that our families hear about what's going on. This is a look at that bus change flyer that we created. We've sent this to all of the schools so that they can print it and assign somebody, likely their family ambassador, to sit and actually write out Scott Varner, new bus route number 918, new pickup time, new location, and put that in the backpacks of our students that goes along with the phone calls and the other ways in which we're reaching out. Our big push is going to be in that final week before we go on winter break. We're already thinking about a potential media event, though I appreciate that our friends in the media have already been reporting a lot on our proposed changes. But we just want to make sure, again, using every avenue and outlet that we can. We're also working on what I call our yellow card reminders for our buses and our drivers. They're generic, but it's one more reminder that our students will get to share with their parents. So on that Friday before the break, our bus drivers will be able to hand these yellow cards to the students as they're getting off the bus or getting on the bus, either at the beginning of the route or at the end of the route, to share with them. So that, again, one more reminder to families that changes are coming. And as you can see on there, it reminds them to check their email, to check the parent portal, and if they have questions, to call the Transportation Call Center. All right, back to our calendar. Here's another important date, December 22nd. That's when the new bus routes will be visible in Parent Portal. That's when the new bus routes will be visible in Parent Portal. They'll actually switch over. So if a parent were to go in the Parent Portal now, they'd see their current student's bus route. On December 22nd, when they go on, they'll see the new route information. And when that switchover happens, then we'll be able to use the Campus Messenger tool that's within Infinite Campus to send out a student-specific email or text to that family with the information about their child's route. And we're not going to do it just once. We're going to do it 3 times before we come back. Again, the Transportation Call Center is going to be open during winter break, and our HR team has actually been working to try to identify additional staff that can help the members of our call center team, both before but especially after break as we come back, knowing that there's going to be a lot of calls. So, a lot of engagement going on, but to recap. So, it's already started, but every family is starting to receive student-specific information, and they will get it at least 6 times over the month leading up to this major change. There will also be dozens of general reminders that will go out. Remember, the new routes will be visible on Parent Portal starting December 22nd, so parents will be able to check the Parent Portal anytime after December 22nd to see those routes. We know that there have been unprecedented challenges, and it's really required an unprecedented response to improve that reliability of our transportation team. It's about trying to make sure that every student has a bus each morning and afternoon to safely get to school and back home. It's about putting more students on fewer buses so there's fewer complaints, fewer frustrations, and hopefully more reliability. And finally, my message to our families, please start watching your mailbox if you haven't received the information in your mail yet. Check your child's backpack over these next couple of weeks. Answer the calls from the school, or at least listen to the voicemail that they leave, and check your email, check your phone for texts. As Dr. Dixon has told us, it is all hands on deck, both internally and externally, as we ask a lot of our building teams, as well as some of our community partners, to help us remind our families of this big change that occurs starting when we come back on January 4th. So, thank you.
So thank you. That concludes my report. And if we have any questions?
Thank you. Board members, questions? Vice President, did you have a question? No, you didn't. Okay, I thought you did earlier. Okay, Dr. Pierce.
So thank you so much for providing this report. Much appreciated. I don't know if this is to Dr. Dixon or to Mr. Varner. How are we clarifying for parents who may be confused if their students were never assigned to a yellow bus? Maybe their students were on a van, or maybe they had one of our contract transporters, transportation services. How are we clarifying with them if they can expect a change and what that change is?
So thank you for that question. Our transportation, many of those situations, those will not change. So it's important to remember that if a student has yellow bus transportation today, they will have yellow bus transportation come January 4th. The times may be a little different, the driver may be different, the route number may be different, but there's not a case of needing to opt in or change anything. If you have an assigned route now, you will have it then. Our transportation team then continues to work through any of the other new route assignments that need to be made. But for the most part, again, for those routes that are currently being covered by our outside partners, those will continue to be covered by those outside partners.
As well as the vans.
Correct.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Board Member Vera.
Thank you. In regards to the Easy District texting service, how far in advance are family going to receive messages if, in fact, their bus is late or not coming? What's the timeline on how far in advance that's communicated?
Thank you. That's an important question, and I know that our transportation team has tried to streamline the process by which that information gets into the system and out using those who are in the dispatch area, as well as the members of that transportation call center. So as soon as they are made aware of that information, they'll be able to send that out. Fortunately, they are trying to set specific times throughout the day in which to report, especially if a bus is not going to show up,
Right.
so that we give as much time as possible.
And then my other question in regards, I don't know if this is on, but the bus route change flyers, I really like the idea that bus drivers will also be able to pass these out. My question is if we've given any thought to maybe on the back of this flyer having maybe just a header in multiple languages, because if we're passing these out, you know, just even if it's your bus route is changing in the back, can that be in Spanish, you know, Portuguese, Somali, just if that is the only time a parent or a grandparent, because sometimes we have to think about, you know, if grandma or auntie or whomever is actually really responsible for transportation and mom is the one getting the emails or the text services, it may not get to whoever's actually at the physical stop to pick them up. So I just think about if we can make sure that any flyers or things that we are giving out, at least in some component, we have more, you know, dialect on there.
Thank you for that idea. And so now it's not so bad that we haven't had these printed yet. So, but I will share that all of the information that's been shared so far has been translated. The ESL team has been fantastic in partnering with our efforts to make sure that any auto dial information that's gone out from the district, any of the email that's gone out at the district level with that general information has been translated. So I appreciate that. And again, that's part of authentic engagement, is making sure that we're reaching families in the languages that they speak.
Thank you.
Board Member Beckerly.
To the point of authentic engagement, are the text messages delivering content, or are they just saying, check your email?
They will, so there will be many different text messages. The messages that will come out starting on December 22nd through Infinite Campus should have the information in them.
Okay.
More importantly, though, we're going to try to get that in an email. That's an awful long text, so we want to make sure that it's something that families will read and will go out. So that'll be our biggest priority, will be trying to get it out through email on those days.
Right. I mean, I don't mind if it's both, but you know, it's better to have that, what the information is in the text, than just a text that says, go check your email. So that's terrific. You know, this is exciting to me in the sense that it seems like the collaboration across the system is really happening. And thank you, that's wonderful. This is the kind of thing we need to see more of, and I really appreciate it. I think I said a few months back, like, it shouldn't just be transportation up there, it should be everybody. And so this seems like everybody's, you know, involved, and that's wonderful, or at least more. The second thing is, this seems, you know, like every crisis gives you an opportunity, right? All of the ways that you're planning on communicating right now, I hope there's some way to capture what was most effective and what wasn't. And, you know, like a analysis afterwards. This worked, this didn't work, this really worked, this worked better than we thought. Don't bother doing this anymore because it was, you know, fell into, you know, nowhere's land or whatever. But so I just want to ask that we capture that, because this is really exciting. It's exciting beyond transportation concern, because now there's like another whole, you know, shift in authentic engagement. So I just want to thank you for that. And then just one other question, and I'm not sure that you can answer this, but it seems like we are having trouble increasing staff in the call center, or there seems to be some hurdle there. Are we overcoming it? Is there something the board can do to facilitate that? I don't know if Mike DeFabo or Rodney or you or anyone wants to answer that, but I guess maybe the real question is there anything we can do so that we have enough staff to actually answer those calls? Because it seems from where I'm sitting that we've needed more people manning that call center for a while.
Yeah, I know one of the things we're looking at is a more of a district-wide call center strategy instead of just having a call center at transportation and one at central office. How can we build just a district-wide strategy around that, and who should be those people that we train to do that, and who should partner with? So we've been talking a lot with CODA to visit their call center to get an understanding of how theirs work, and if that's something that we can implement in our district through our communications department.
Yeah, I mean, and that makes sense long-term for sure. I'm wondering, like, in the short term, it seems like we've had a need for more people.
Yes.
All right, that's all.
I do know that we've been looking strategically at those times when the call center is at its that's highest demand.
Yep, the beginning of
So in those
school.
weeks leading up to the start of the school year, or unique situations such as this, when are the surges, and are there those ways in which we could identify maybe temporary staff that could come in and assist those teams? Knowing that there is some limitations in the size of the call center, the number of lines that we have, but during important times, we can add to that. And so that's actually what we're looking to do for using some of the staff in both, in several different central offices to dedicate to help that team when we come back from break, knowing that's going to be another high demand time.
Because it seems to me something as serious as knowing where our children are and communicating where our children are, we should, if we have to add more lines, we add more lines. If we have to, do whatever we do to surge staff, it's just that important. And I just had one. Oh, it just left me something positive I was going to say.
While you're thinking about that,
Yeah.
I'm going to go to Board Member Cole.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for this presentation, Mr. Varner, and Madam Superintendent. The parent portal piece. Now, our charter non-publics, I suspect that they don't necessarily use that system to capture their student data. How will these messages populate into their respective systems for them to be a part of our authentic engagement?
Thank you for that question and a chance to clarify. So Parent Portal is something used by our families, by Columbus City Schools families, to be able to go in, input information, see information about their young person. Our charter non-public families do not have Parent Portal. However, the information about our charter non-public families is included in Infinite Campus. So we currently work with the administration at each of those charter non-public schools, asking them to get that information and put it into Infinite Campus. And so we rely upon the administrators at those charter and non-public schools to input that information in Infinite Campus, including an email and phone number, hopefully a cell phone number, so they can receive the text. So those families will receive the information through our emails, through our texts, and we send them out right there before we come back. But you are correct that a charter non-public school family doesn't have Parent Portal, but their information is in Infinite Campus. So we've been encouraging, as we've been sharing information with those administrators at the charter and non-public schools, please help make sure that your families are communicating with you updated information so that we have the best information as we're trying to reach out to them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I remembered.
Okay.
Thank you to everyone who's going to be working over Christmas break, or the winter break, sorry, because that seems really, really critical and necessary, and we appreciate it.
I have a couple questions just about when it starts, because it's like the beginning of school again. So what are some of the supports that families have or will have the first day? Do our principals feel ready? What kind of things are we doing to be ready for on the ground, basically start over with first day of school in terms of busing? And then kind of as a follow-up, and maybe this is more for either Dr. James, Mr. Olam, or Mr. Stuffelbeam, is how do we know we're being successful? What kind of data are we looking at in order to, because we've already heard, we've already taken out 100 routes. So is that enough to ensure buses are on time, that we have full coverage? What does that look like? And how many more routes do we think we are going to eliminate to get there? When are we going to know that if we don't know it now? So kind of two-part question.
If I can on the first part, and first let me share my great appreciation for Mr. Stufflebean and his team. They have truly been great to work with, and have, when I expressed that, wanting to work with them on this effort, I appreciated them kind of opening the doors and saying, please help us. And I really appreciate that, because they're doing an amazing job of working through this. As we've thought about family engagement in that week as we come back, not only all of the messages that are going out, but again, it's all hands on deck, as Dr. Dixon has said. So our family ambassadors are ready. We've been spending this time talking with our principals, who are making sure that they're talking with the new bus drivers that may have been assigned to their school. So taking time to make sure those bus drivers know that at this specific elementary, this is where we line up, or this is where we pull in. So we're trying to do as much of that now, so that when we get to January 4th, there's not a lot of the same first day situation of, wait a minute, where does this bus go? Who are you, driver? So we're trying to work through those now. I may look to someone else on the other question.
We'll have turn it over to Rodney, because he is on the meeting.
Thank you. We have went through all the scenarios. What we're looking at right now is our drivers have completed the bid as of last week. They know their routes right now. They're going to start performing and reviewing those routes to look at everything and make sure and ensure that we aren't missing something. We're double and triple and quadruple checking everything, because we want to make sure we have everything squared away, because we don't have that luxury of, it is the start of the school year. We want to make sure that we're ready to roll when we come back on January 4th for CCS. We actually start the new transportation plan on January 2nd, because we have some charter non-publics and private schools that are going to start back in session on January 2nd. The second follow-up question to that is the data that we're looking at. This system for us, we know the ins and outs of it. We've brought some very experienced routers back with our experienced routers that we already have here. We know that these routes were established. We basically built from the status that we had from the 21-22 school year. So we know that we've been successful at this. One of the things that we did with this year, rather than we used those routes from the 21-22 school year as a baseline, and then we refurbished those, and we did some efficiency work with them and made things more manageable, and basically made them end in areas where we needed them to end to be able to successfully start the next tier of that route, so that things fit together like a puzzle. The unknown that we don't know, and this is what we have every year, is we've routed everybody that we have on the student information lists. We know that not all of them will ride, so we put everyone on a bus. And what we'll do is, once we start running this, we will reevaluate those routes, and areas that we have light buses, we can change and do some changes like that. This afforded us the ability to get that number down to where we're at. CCS will be responsible for approximately 461 routes. With that being said, we have a 510 drivers available to us right now, active. For the first time in a couple years, we've had more routes than drivers. Well, let me rephrase that. We have more drivers than routes. So we have a small number of surplus drivers that we're going to have at bus routes, at bus compounds, that we want to use as a sweeper type of bus. This plan we're still developing on how it actually is going to look and what the numbers of those will be. But we're going to have some certain drivers at compounds that are unassigned. As long as they're not needed to cover one of the established routes, we're going to have them placed in strategic areas that we feel we can best utilize them to be a sweeper bus should we need it. And then you had another question that I need you to ask me again.
I don't remember, actually, but you answered a lot of things and even questions I had coming up. But since you're here, I'm going to ask board members if they have any questions for him since... Okay. No, go ahead. Did you have something else to say?
I did. I also wanted to piggyback on what Scott said with the Infinite Campus and our partnerships. I know with Alpha Route, we had the Alpha School. With Versatrans, we've implemented and established the E-Link, which is going to be a portal that they use to go right in and look up at students information for routing. Our CCS schools will have it. The charter non-publics and the privates will have it. That process started, I believe, yesterday, in making sure that we have everybody set up and ready to roll for that. And our hope is to have it by the end of this week. I believe I was told Thursday. It should be up and running for all of our partners and our CCS schools with their ID numbers, with their login information, and they'll be able to very simply go in, type in a student's number, ID number, hit enter, and it'll pull up all that student's data for their bus routes.
Mr. Cole has a question.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, sir, for this information. What happens when a student gets captured for morning transportation but is lost for the afternoon? There's been a number of incidents where that's occurred. Is this system set up to help prevent that? And what happens if that occurs?
Yes, this system is a hands-on approach. Each one of our students, when we route them through VersaTrans, it routes them for AM and PM. Okay. The scenarios you're talking about were a specific instance that we saw with Alpha. It was internal glitches and things of that nature that we would continuously work with Alpha to try and correct as part of the algorithm for some reason. It's much more in depth than what I'm able to explain.
Oh, I understand already, trust me. But that's why I did call for the question. Thank you, though. This is awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Additional questions? I want to echo everyone's thanks to both the transportation, communication, our bus drivers, everyone that's really helping with this. It is a all hands-on approach. And we want to proactively thank our families and our partners for doing your part all break to remind our students and families that their bus routes are changing, maybe a little bit or maybe a lot, but everyone just needs to make sure that they are aware. So thank you, team, for your work, and families, get ready. All right. Are there any additional questions on any other pieces of the superintendent's report for her? Okay, we're going to go ahead and move over to the internal auditor's office. Hello, Auditor Smith.
Good afternoon, President Adair, Vice President Reyes. I do not have a report this evening. We had A&A last Thursday, and I really haven't had enough time to put together a report for you. And we also didn't have a quorum, so stay tuned for an update in January.
All right. Thank you. Is there any comments from our audit co-chairs?
Just that we had a really robust discussion on risk and how to address it and how to identify it and both make sure we're aware of it and also strategies for becoming comfortable with it. So stay tuned on that front. And we'll eventually be bringing that to the board proper.
Thank you. We're going to go over to the Treasurer's office. We have Mr. Roush here. Any updates?
No report this evening. However, I would like to remind everybody that Finance and Appropriations is next Wednesday, December 14th at 4 p.m.
Thank you. Are there any comments from our Finance Committee co-chairs?
None.
All right. We're going to go ahead and move into board matters. Item 8.1 is a second reading of amendment to Board Policy 5421, Middle and High School Determination of Grades. I'm going to turn that over to Board Member Brown, who is the chair of our Governance and Advocacy Committee.
Thank you. Policy number 5421 is here for the second reading and adoption this evening. As you may recall, when this was first presented, the changes are primarily a matter of conforming to law. There have been some changes, and it was necessary to do this and do this fairly quickly, and it's gone very smoothly. It did go before the Governance, Policy, and Advocacy Committee. And although at that particular meeting there was not a quorum, everybody in attendance agreed that this should move forward. In addition to conforming to law, there's some other minor cleanup, technical nature, grammar, things like that. And I present it for approval.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Cole,
Yes.
Dr. Pierce,
Yes.
Vice President Reyes,
Yes.
Ms. Vera,
Yes.
President Adair,
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We'll now go to item 8.2, resolution to support the Coalition to End Tobacco Targeting Initiative to end the sale of flavored tobacco. This is a second reading. I'll turn it over to Board Member Cole.
Thank you, Madam President. This is a wonderful opportunity to read, and first and foremost, before I even get started, I just want to say thank you to all the colleagues that helped Misty and myself put this language together. So thank you for all your insights and feedback and addition. I think that this is language that really speaks very uniquely to where we stand. So this resolution to support the Coalition to End Tobacco Targeting's initiative to end sale of flavored tobacco, what this initiative is, this resolution is our direct support, where we stand on the same platitude about protecting the health and wellness of our children and other children in the community here. But it also calls some action to bear. It calls to action for our Columbus City Council to not only support the ban of this type of product, that it doesn't get accessed by children, but at the same time educates our young people on the dangers, the hazards of this type of product to their health and well-being. I'd like to just only read the first four whereases and the last two therefores, if I may, Madam President, and then move this for acceptance by the Board of Education. Whereas Columbus City Schools' mission is that each child is highly educated, prepared for leadership and service, and empowered for success as a citizen of a global community, and whereas a public school district is our responsibility to encourage healthy lifestyles that provide our students with the greatest opportunity for personal and academic success, and whereas the Board of Education maintains anti-tobacco use policies 1615, 3215, 5512, and 7434 for the protection of staff and children. And whereas the North Star for the district is the portrait of a graduate, which requires the district to address the well-being of the whole child, including the physical, social, emotional, and intellectual aspects. And I'll go down to therefore be it resolved. And therefore be it resolved that we, the Columbus City School Board of Education, support the campaign for tobacco-free kids and the Coalition to End Tobacco Targeting Initiatives to stop the sale of flavored tobacco in the effort to protect the well-being of all of our students. And further be it resolved, the Columbus Board of Education respectfully requests that the Columbus City Council support efforts to educate all children on the dangers of nicotine, methanol, and flavored tobacco products, and support the Coalition to End Tobacco Targeting's initiative and to end sale of flavored tobacco. We're joined by today by Miss Amanda Turner. I think she's still here, is she?
No, I believe
Did she leave out?
stepped out.
Okay, she might have stepped out. But Madam President, board colleagues, I'd like to ask that we pass this legislation this evening, this resolution, so that we can forward this to City Council. And again, I thank you for your support.
That's a motion by Mr. Cole. Is there a second?
A second.
Just a second. Discussion. Board Member Brown.
Thank you. This is a well-done resolution, and it is a very important topic. It's one that I spent 6 years working beyond full-time on for the state of Ohio, and I agree with nearly all of this resolution. My problem is only with the last paragraph, the last sentence, essentially, and that is the second be it resolved provision. That provision is changed from what the original was, and I think that, yes, it's better than that was, but I do not believe that this body should be telling another body, public body, city council, what they should do or should not do. I think that's inappropriate. I believe that we would be offended if the city publicly told us what to do or what not to do. I think that the resolution without that can stand on its own, can state what we believe. It will be used, I think, by the organization, which is the Coalition Against Tobacco Targeting, in their own work, in their own efforts, and it clearly supports those efforts. I just don't think we should be in the business of telling another governmental body what they should do.
So, may I?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This isn't actually a mandate. This is actually a respectful request. And this is why we were very deliberate in how we worded it. This is an opportunity, and I've even said this very publicly throughout my discourse with media today, is that however they decide, this body wants the opportunity to work collaboratively with them to ensure we're working together to educate our youngsters on how detrimental this is to their health and well-being. So this is a respectful request, not a mandate. But I thank you for that feedback.
Board Member Beckerly.
I have a thought about a little bit of a language change that might address the problem. The Columbus Board of Education supports the Columbus City Council's effort to educate. We just say we support their efforts rather than requesting them to do anything.
I think they're determining if there will be effort, though. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so they are having public hearing right now to figure out what they are doing. So there's nothing yet to support because they have not made the determination, if that makes sense.
Or maybe we say support any effort the City Council may undertake to educate.
I am fine with the language as is.
Okay.
I'm fine with the language.
Dr. Pierce.
Understanding that some of my colleagues are fine with the language as is, I do think there is value into the points that my colleagues are raising. As a governing body, we give and show respect to other governing bodies by not making such requestful, respectful, humble request. I think in our passing of this resolution, we are providing the support, the evidence, and the action to show that we are supportive of our city council taking action to deal with this. I do agree, again, with my colleagues that there is a form of respect that we just show to other governing bodies because it's the expectation that they're going to show that respect back to us when we're in a similar position. And whether it is a humble or respectful request, I think each of us at this table would feel a certain way if a resolution came back to our table that said the similar language. So I don't think we lose the impact by striking just those couple of words.
Member Brown.
Thank you. I continue to believe that final provision should come out for the reasons that have been stated, including the reason that our president mentioned is that because there is not final language by city council, we don't know what it is we're asking them to do. And until there's finality to that language, we can't take a position on it. More importantly, or not more importantly, just as importantly, I questioned within that provision, if it were to remain included, I had questions about the description of who should educate the children that are referred to. It's vague. It just says, somebody should educate children. And what does support mean? It's not defined. Again, it's vague in that provision. Does that mean financial support? And if it's financial, this would be a very strange way for this body to ask for financial support from the city. In addition, two other minor items. And I apologize, I'm not looking at the final draft that has been presented. So I don't know whether the changes have already been made. But
It's in
the
board
provision
docs.
should begin, be it further resolved.
Are you in board docs? It's in board docs.
And finally, and I heard it read, the word methanol was used. Methanol is wood alcohol. Not, the word should be menthol.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
But the important thing is, I continue to believe it shouldn't be there. The paragraph shouldn't be there at all.
Madam President,
Mr. Cole.
I'd like to offer a motion to amend the word methanol to menthol, please.
I believe you just misspoke, Mr. Cole.
Okay,
Is that already corrected?
okay, thank you. Thank you.
So
That your,
So I'm just
President, I like to call
showing
the
him the
question.
difference. It does need to be corrected.
menthol or what? Can you point to the line?
But it says menthol in there. But if you come up, but it says, so that might be the best.
Menthol and flavored tobacco products, is that the last?
We just need to do some grammatical corrections.
Just change the word.
No, look at it. M-E-T-H-M-E-N. So he just wants to make sure that this aligns with that.
I think this is an old copy, is what I'm trying to tell you. It's menthol here.
Correct.
Okay, we can just say that we would, anytime the word menthol is stated, we would like it checked before the final version goes out that it is correctly spelled. Is that agreeable?
Yes.
So we don't have to sit here and try to,
Yes.
we know how to spell the word, let's make it correct.
But Madam President.
Yes, sir.
I do call the question that this body takes a vote and a stand on an issue to support this organization that's doing work effectively in the community, working with our children and families to ensure that we don't have that our kids don't have access to this detrimental drug, tobacco, flavored tobacco that can affect their health.
Excuse me. Were my comments taken as an amendment?
No.
They were
No.
intended that way, yes, to
So-
strike the final.
So Board Member Brown is, first of all, Mr. Cole has called the question. We
So
need a
calling the question has precedence here.
We need
Is
a
a two-thirds, you need a second for that motion.
second to
and it
call
is
the
a two-thirds
question.
vote.
Yes. Is there a second to call the question? It fails. Okay, so Mr. Brown has asked for an amendment to strike the last paragraph. Is there a second? That fails.
Wait a minute, say that again?
To strike the last paragraph.
And you move to, you want to?
I've moved
There was
to
no second,
amend to strike the final provision.
and there was no second.
You seconding?
No, I want to amend.
Okay.
Okay, so that fails. So, Dr. Pierce.
So I'd like to motion to amend the resolution to strike from the last paragraph the words respectfully request the Columbus City Council.
So it would just read, the Columbus Board of Education, and then to change the word to supports efforts.
To educate all children on the dangers of nicotine, menthol, and flavored tobacco products, and support the coalition to end tobacco targeting initiatives to end the sale of flavored tobacco. Because if we think about our last meeting, when the gentleman came and spoke before us, it's the coalition's initiative. Our part as a board, as Board Member Beckerly has stated, is to help support our administration, teachers, and staff as they educate our students on not using the products. We want to focus on our action that we need to take versus somebody else's action.
So there's a, okay, that's a motion and a second. Discussion.
I'm sorry, I missed the second. Who's the second?
Beckerly.
Beckerly, thank you.
Discussion. Okay, call roll. So everyone understands the amendment, correct?
Yes. It's a striking of the word respectfully request.
And Columbus City Council.
Yes.
President Dare, would you like me to read the final?
Yes.
The final, it would then read, be it further resolved, the Columbus Board of Education supports efforts to educate all children on the dangers of nicotine, menthol, and flavored tobacco products, and support the Coalition to End Tobacco Targeting's initiative to end the sale of flavored tobacco.
Everyone understand? Call the roll.
President Adair.
No.
Board Member Beckerly.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Cole.
No.
Dr. Pierce.
Yes.
Vice President Reyes.
Yes.
Ms. Vera.
Yes.
The amendment carries.
Thank you. Now, there's a motion and a second to approve.
So you're now to the amended resolution.
Any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Cole.
Yes.
Dr. Pierce.
Yes.
Vice President Reyes.
Yes.
Ms. Vera.
Yes.
President Adair.
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
The motion as amended carries.
Thank you. We will get that resolution finalized and sent to the coalition. Thank you all for those efforts.
Thank you all.
All right, we are now going to move to item 8.3, presentation on COASBO and OSBA. We have two guests here this evening. We have Rick Lewis, Executive Director and CEO of the OSBA, and we have Kathy McFarland, one of my faves, with the OSBA to present. So we'll turn it over to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, President Adair. And to all the members of the board, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to be here, and Superintendent Dixon. We're thrilled to be here this evening. Speaking as the executive director and Kathy as our deputy exec, it was exciting for me to hear about the innovative partnerships and the creative solutions you're employing here in Columbus to some of these issues of the day. So I was thrilled to hear a lot of this. And the concept of being able to create new partnerships and employ all creative solutions, I think, is a great segue to talking about the newly formed Coalition of State School Boards Associations. And I recognize that you have an ambitious agenda this evening, so we promise to keep our comments as brief as possible. But we also don't want to let the brevity of our words undermine the importance. So I think we have a short PowerPoint to fly through, but we want to make it as conversational as possible, and respond to any questions, comments, concerns, or criticisms that you may have this evening. So with that, I think, we're on slide 1. That's what I needed to see. Just about a year ago, the Coalition of State School Boards Association was just still in the infancy stages of a dream. As I think many of you are familiar, especially those who've been on the OSBA Board of Directors, it was just about a year ago that OSBA's Board of Directors, our Board of Trustees, voted to not renew our membership in the National Association. And it was for a myriad of reasons. I don't know that it's constructive to go through that whole process this evening, but I'll be as transparent with you as you wish. But the decision was made to no longer affiliate with that national organization. I was directed by our Board of Directors, our Board of Trustees, to come up with new ways then that Ohio school board members, our Board of Trustees, and all of our members, our 3,500 school board members around the state, could continue networking and take advantage of the opportunities of learning from each other, communicating with each other, and continuing to get in service on a national basis. And that was the kernel, the seed that was planted that founded this new organization. So when OSBA took its vote last October, we were the third state in the federation, right behind Tennessee and Pennsylvania, to terminate our membership. We had some conversations with those two states and were later joined by the Illinois Association about the prospects of, at the time it was just 4 states, but we wanted to come up with something that we could have our members work with each other. And then we decided, let's get even more ambitious and talk about making it a formal structure. So we created the Coalition of State School Board Associations. And we knew that going into it, we would want to have some core values, and these were very important, is that we wanted to be focused and responsive, be able to be fluid enough to, and nimble enough to take advantage of situations and challenges and opportunities. We wanted to be extremely transparent in everything that we did. We wanted to be relevant. We wanted to be representative and accountable to the state associations and its memberships. And more than anything, we wanted unity. That was one of the problems we had had in the past, was such bifurcation of the membership. And that we wanted to, as we move forward, to make certain that we were all on the same page and had unanimous support in the work that lay ahead. So beyond the core values, this is so cool. I've never had this iPad to be able to do it this way before. We ended up creating, the coalition. And really what it was, it's a nonpartisan. We wanted to stress that right out of the gate. We're not red, we're not blue, we're as purple as you can get. We understand that we need to be, I don't want to say political in nature, but we need to be able to work with legislators. We need to be able to work with policymakers, but we need to be able to do so in a nonpartisan environment. And that was really probably the most important thing out of all the criteria that we talked about, was anything that we did had to be nonpartisan. We came up with a purpose, and there are many lines on here, but I really want to emphasize the two that are underscored here for you. What this new association is trying to do is be a source of assistance, guidance, unity, support to all of the state school board associations in the country. It's not endeavoring to serve 100,000 school board members necessarily one by one. They're working with the state associations to work with their respective members. But our goals are all the same. We want to ensure that students and their families have access to great public schools that are governed by high-performing school board leaders. And that was really the bottom line. The coalition is created to help the school board association, to help our members. And again, there's our North Star. If anything, our compass is making certain that students and their families have access to these high-quality public schools. Now, as far as the members of this association, in the last 10 months, it has grown exponentially. We went from Ohio, Illinois, Pennsylvania, and Tennessee to now 23 states in the country are participating in this association. So Ohio is one of the founding members. We have been involved in both the governance. Mr. Robert Hurd, the OSBA president from Cleveland Municipal, sits on the steering committee, as do I. We've had a number of OSBA staff who have been involved in either helping set up legislative platform, creating curriculum and logistics for an annual conference for all types of professional development events. But I wanted you to be able to see who all's involved with this association. And here's even another way to look at it graphically. The green states are all members of this new federation. The white states have not joined yet. Some still belong to NSBA. I believe there are 5 or 6 states that belong to neither group at this time that are kind of taking a wait-and-see approach. The wait-and-see is COSBA going to be relevant and purposeful, or the other flip side of that is they're probably waiting to see, is NSBA going to survive? But there are about 5 or 6 who have not participated on either side of the ledger at this point. But the green states are all, as you can see, members of this new group. This just spells out a little bit more detail on how the regions are split up and which states are in. So you can see, if I go back a slide, this is not a collection of just red states. It's not a collection of blue states. You'll see diversity amongst each of these. You'll see some of the more populated states. You'll see some of the less populated. We have a great mixture. I would tell you this representation is somewhere approaching 65 to 70%, somewhere in that range, of the students, the school boards, and the school board members in the country. So while we're a little bit less than half the states, we have about 2/3 of the students and their representative school boards. And Kathy, feel free to jump in here at any time, but I'm going to be handing off to you here in a moment anyway. Some of the key activities that we're getting involved with, we're sharing information with each other. The states are using this mechanism, this conduit, as a way to get information to and from each other that we in turn share with our membership. We've tried to get together through shared resources. We're working together to provide networking opportunities. We're working together to provide professional development for individuals like you, our school board members. And we're trying to have a presence in various areas, including legal advocacy, legislative advocacy. And again, we're still 10 months old. So I think in association lifespan terms, we're in our infancy stages. But I'm convinced our best days still lie ahead with all the work that we've been able to accomplish in such a short period of time. Now, a lot of people might ask what's different about this group than where we were participating earlier. And the first is that we're focusing on state school board associations as the conduit to get information to our members. This group is not, it's a not-for-profit. It's a not-for-profit organization, a 501c3 or C4. Okay, thank you. We're not looking at a bottom line. We don't have a building, we don't have pension, we don't have a large staff, we don't have a large infrastructure. So we're able to be smaller, more nimble, and frankly, more economical than what we've experienced in the past. Our governance structure is set up so that it's shared governance. Every state has an opportunity to serve and to lead on a rotating basis. It's not a matter of finding out how much time and money people want to put into the campaigns to run for a national office. Everybody, every state has an opportunity here. One of the most important things I think we did in our infancy was to create what we call an urban board alliance. Some of you may have participated in groups like CUBE in the past, and this is our version of CUBE. We thought it was important enough that the urban issues of the day are singular enough that this was an essential part of our function to make certain that that networking opportunity, our advocacy, and just the chance to get out information in this area would continue. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. We're creating business partnerships. We've been approached by many, many companies wanting to be sponsors, and we're being very careful about that. We don't want to sponsor or partner with anybody who comes down the line just because they have a check and want to put their logo on a screen at a conference. As a matter of fact, we have capped, this is an unusual business model, but we've capped the dollar amount that any one company can contribute to this organization. So there is no appearance of favoritism or any type of partnership that truly may not exist. Our dues, all of our other expenses are quite affordable. I think I can speak and share with you right now, OSBA is paying about 40% in dues to what we paid before. As we plan these events, I think what you'll see is the price has been reduced somewhere probably 40 to 50% on what you may have paid in the past. And there are many things you probably subscribed to in the past that will still exist, but there'll be no additional fee to Columbus City Schools, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. I probably don't need to spend a lot of time talking about all of the progress we've made, but it's important to know that we have a governance team in place. The framework is set up. We've been established as a corporation. We have we're searching for an executive director as we speak. But all of the things that would go along with creating a new organization, those check marks are being made as we each day, and I think the newly seated board of directors will take place in January. So we have our final meeting of a transition committee this weekend in Chicago. A number of school board members are meeting to finalize everything. But bylaws, partnerships, work-alike groups, everything's in place and on its way. I know one of the issues that's important to everybody is legislative advocacy, and this is where we're really going to shine. The organization that we formerly belonged to relied on the grassroots efforts of Ohioans or Michigan or Illinois school board members, whoever they may be, to do the grassroots lobbying in Congress on behalf of the National Federation. Our new group has hired a DC lobbying firm to help supplement those efforts. And rather than try to tackle every legislative platform under the sun, this first year we've started with 5. These were issues that we were all in agreement in, and these seem to be the The most pressing issues of the day, they included broadband, IDEA, child nutrition, teacher and principal effectiveness, and child nutrition. I don't think I was redundant. But each of those issues we've created with a number of executive directors across the country, entire white papers on each of those subjects and what public schools are interested in. And we're using our DC firm to help with boots on the ground actually in the halls of Congress. I want to spend a moment or two talking about the Urban Board Alliance, and I'm now seeing that that is completely unreadable in that size of font in this room, but okay, that's great, thank you. Well, yeah, and again, you can see, as we created the Urban Board Alliance, all the issues that we know make our urban schools unique. But in the past, getting to be part of that urban group had a price tag affixed to it with the old organization. I believe the last my records would show would be 2019, and Columbus City Schools paid $12,750 to be members of CUBE. There is no charge to you for access to any of this. Those dues are all paid by OSBA up front. And we wanted to also make certain that just because a district's not one of the 6 or 7 largest in the state, you still may have urban issues. There are small school districts that have just any one of those things, whether it's homelessness or human trafficking or suicide or trauma or the socioeconomics. So we wanted to make certain that regardless of your ADM, there was an opportunity to get this information and network and share ideas. I know a great example is Chris Farwig, who is our president-elect at OSBA, frequently comes to our meetings of our small school district advisory network, the smallest school districts in the state. I'm certain you have marching bands bigger than some of these school districts. But we've learned that these smaller districts can learn from the large districts and vice versa. So we didn't want the ability to pay to be a gatekeeper on access to this information. Now, the other part about the Board Alliance that I can share with you this evening is, again, I guess this is all in front of you, but there is no separate fee, and we want to be able to get you the information you need to be able to address the challenging environments that you work in every day. Kathy, we're going to turn to the events here at this point, and feel free to jump in, but there's a lot of opportunity for you to engage at the federal level. This past year, we had our first, I think we have 5 programs lined up, the ones behind us already. Last September, we had our inaugural urban board meeting in Atlanta, Georgia. I think it brought in somewhere close to 400 school board members from around the country to talk about issues of the day. We have coming up in March, there'll be our first annual conference, and we'll be drawing school board members from 23 different states. It's shaping up to be pretty good. I'll share with you, Ohio School Board Association staff members are working on the planning team for this. Not many of the other state associations had experience putting on a conference of several thousand people, so we volunteered and we're helping with the logistics and the curriculum. There we go. This September, we're going to have a federal advocacy event, and I know several of you have participated in the past. Mr. Cole, I think you've participated in our Federal Relations Network. Ms. Reyes, I know you've been a member of that team in the past. That's important. We still, even though we have a lobbying firm to work for us, there's something about legislators meeting their constituents and hearing how does this affect your kids back home. And we want to preserve that. Actually, we want to take it up to a next level. So that'll be scheduled in September. And hopefully, I think we've picked a week that you're going to see more legislators in town than you've seen in the past. I know historically sometimes we just get to see the aides. And I know always doing it in January or February every year, there's always a snowstorm that hits and keeps half the people from making it in or out of town. But we're excited about this opportunity as well. So there's a quick, less than 10-minute flyby, I hope, of the event or of the organization. I know Kathy has some other things we want to brag about while we're here locally to talk about some of the neat things you did at our Capitol Conference and here in Ohio. But before we go there, maybe we can hit the pause button and answer any questions that you may have this evening.
Board members, do you have questions about the presentation? We'll start with Board Member Brown.
Thank you. Just to, I guess, clarify ways in which this new organization differs from NSBA, and I honestly don't recall the answer, but this organization will be a membership of state associations.
That's correct.
NSBA was an organization made up of school boards.
Now, that part is incorrect, and I don't mean to correct you publicly, Mr. Brown, but that's always been a misconception.
Because I don't know.
It's the greatest misconception we've had, because schools like Columbus had the opportunity to sign up for subscription services like Cube and those national affiliate programs. NSBA was founded and only had 49 members in its constitution. They are the 49 state school board associations. Hawaii doesn't have an association. They have one school district for all the islands. But because of NSBA's business model, and again, I'm not speaking on their behalf, but they expanded those types of programmings to market to individuals and to individual districts as part of their business model, not as part of their constitution, bylaws, or their membership. So that was always a point of contention between the states and the national organization, because in some states, they competed head-to-head on professional development opportunities, on publications. We never got too hung up about that in Ohio. I think our reputation will stand or fall on its own, but they were both created to serve the 49 state associations. One just expanded that into secondary markets. Maybe that's a better business way to put it.
And the other questions I have pertain to some extent to legislative platform and to
Yes,
what
sir.
this new organization and with its lobbyists will be able to do. For example, will this be focused to some extent on the support of public education versus, we've got issues in Ohio where, from our perspective, we see an attack on public education on many fronts.
Absolutely.
And, so will there be a focus there? And the additional issues are things like censorship, where people want certain books out, certain programs out, certain, or they want to frame it in the context of parental rights. And we've got lots of that going on in Ohio, and I know there is across the country.
Absolutely.
So to what extent or how will this new organization address those kinds of things?
I can share with 100% unwavering certainty that local control will still be at the top of the list of things we always will advocate for. Now, you'll see we only had 5 issues on our initial platform, which looks pretty thin to what OSBA has. But again, we knew we're in our first year, we were 8 months old, we're going to start slowly here. I'm certain that that list will continue to grow. But what we want to avoid are polarizing issues, or some issues that may be so unique that only one state has a dog in that hunt, so to speak. We want to concentrate on the education issues, not some of the things that we had been saddled with in the past, like, some states, global warming was their hot button. I'm still never figured out how that makes it into the plank of a school board association, but that was equal to local control in the other organization. Oregon, state of Oregon, to them a huge issue was forestry and logging. That doesn't really affect us so much. So we want to try to keep this group's platform focused a little bit more narrowly, but really with a laser focus on preserving local control and making certain that school boards have the resources, the flexibility, and the support to do the things you need to do to raise that bar and give every kid a world-class education regardless of their zip code.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Board Member Vera.
Thank you, President Adair. So as a newer board member and someone that, has just been able to start experiencing a lot of these educational and networking opportunities, one of the things that I felt has been missing is the way that we engage students in these opportunities. And so I guess my question is, will there be opportunity or has there been conversation about student engagement, how we can take students, or can students be able to be a part or a voice at the table as we're talking about issues that impact them daily? Has there been any conversation around how we can include our students if in fact some of them have interest in this type of service?
Outstanding question. I'm going to ask Kathy to help me with this one.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Kathy McFarland. I'm the Deputy Executive Officer. Anytime you mention students, I get really excited. Absolutely. I don't understand how people do their jobs, especially what you're doing right now, without listening to those that we serve, which are our community, our families, but most importantly, our students. We've just created a new strategic plan here at OSBA, and we are actually, one of our strategies and our outcomes is to make sure that we have opportunities to sit down with students and speak to them. Here is the challenge, though. There are many school board members that say, stay out of that lane. That's not the association's work. And so what we believe at OSBA is that we like to collect that information. We're here to support you, and we're going to bring that to the national level in regards to what are our students saying to us and what are their challenges.
I think I can add to that. I know at the annual conference, I haven't seen the final curriculum yet, but I know one of the things they talked about were having students immersed as presenters at the annual conference in Tampa this spring. And I don't know if they've been able to secure the logistics of any of that yet, but I know that's one of the things in work.
Other questions?
If there are no other questions about the National Association, let me ask Kathy to bring us home with one last slide. Here we go.
Once again, good evening, everyone. It's great to see you again. I hope you had a good holiday. I, as a little side note, had an opportunity to speak to juniors and seniors today in one of the high schools that's near our building. And I talked to them about wellness and the choices that they make today, how that can significantly influence the choices they have tomorrow. So I commend you on the work that you're doing and the resolution to make sure that we're keeping our students educated and safe. So thank you for the work that you do. I was asked to talk a little bit about our OSBA Capital Conference on November 13th. We had over 7,000 attendees to our conference. We held it at the Columbus Convention Center. From Columbus City, we had 80 people register for that event. So 80 of your employees or principals or board members or your superintendent. Those people came and visited us down at the convention center. Some of the things that you were directly involved in, the Black Caucus dinner, President Adair advocated for the Leo Lucas Scholarship. I'm going to do a little PSA here for that scholarship. The application portal will open January 20 of 23. The Leo Lucas Scholarship, named for the late Leo Lucas, a Dayton City School board member and educator, provides graduating ethnically diverse high school seniors funds for college. So please make sure that your seniors know that this is an opportunity for them and that the portal opens on January 2023. And we thank President Adair for her advocating for those scholarships. We had a delegate assembly, and Dr. Tina Pierce was your delegate representative at that assembly. Hopefully she shared that experience with you. We had over 150 breakout sessions. Mr. Roush, I believe, spoke about Robert's Rule of Order, which you know is vital to good conversations at this level. We had nearly 100 student achievement fair displays, and Columbus City sent us 2 teams, your STEAM team and Fort Hayes Photography joined us at that. And we really love to have students come down there, not only to show off the work that they're doing, but also, like we like to do, collaborate with their peers and kind of look around and see what else is going on in education. So we had a great conference. We thank you for your commitment to our association. And if you have any questions, this is the time. Go ahead.
I do want to add one thing to that, Kathy. I think it's important for your stakeholders, your community to know, when Kathy mentioned that 80 people participated, that is just, I'm editorializing now, but it's incredible opportunity in that, and I think it's an efficient use of your resources, because once you paid for the first 6 individuals, yeah, everybody else comes free. So the fact that you were able to send 72 people for free to this 3-day event just speaks volumes about the inclusiveness of involving whether they're teachers, the management team, the board, other stakeholders involved. It turns out to be a $26 convention by the time you do the math on it. So the fact that, again, that you were able to get so many people there at the same price that it would have cost to send 5 or 6, that's fantastic. A tip of the hat, congratulations, and I wish more districts would follow that lead. But I didn't want that to be misinterpreted.
Okay, are there any questions? Any questions on our participation? We're going to have a discussion in a moment with Dr. Pierce.
As opposed to me, I guess, leaning in and having the conversation, could you all speak to the impact that the leadership that has been provided by myself and President Adair has had on OSBA and its potential ability to have on the new organization?
Let me go first. Well, for those who are watching online or those who are in the room and not familiar, the Ohio School Board Association is a private nonprofit association, but everything we do, our governance, our platform, our policies, our mission, our vision, our strategy, our guiding principles are all determined by you, school board members. And especially when it comes to our Board of Trustees or any of the governance committee, these individuals are like the all-stars of school board members. I know a number of you have served on our board, but your peers who have been selected by your peers to represent their voice on a state level and now on the federal stage. Having individuals who are engaged and that have the insight and willing to share and ask the tough questions, whether they be about the association and operations, whether they're about our platform, whether they're about, just controversial issues of the day. We count on that council, and perhaps we may take it for granted. But Columbus is in a fortunate position that as as the largest district in the state, you have an automatic appointment to this, to our board of directors, our trustees. I know a lot of districts are envious of that, and there are many districts, other cities that have that appointment that don't take full advantage of it. I can say with absolute confidence that Columbus has a long history of taking this assignment, this charge, very seriously, contributing on every step along the way, and never being a group to just rubber stamp. They ask the tough questions. We need to justify our responses, and the push is helpful. So I know Dr. Pierce both serves on the OSBA Board of Trustees and in the Central Region as an officer in the region activities. So that influence goes far beyond Columbus City to the Central Region of the state, where Columbus's experience, your voice, your perspective make a huge difference. And then at that state table, and then we're able to carry on that information onto a larger platform now as we work with COSBA trying to represent the state association and all of our members in the large urban districts on that federal group. So, Kathy, would you add anything to that?
Just your involvement, quite honestly, your involvement in our committees, on our trustees, your leadership. I think Mr. Lewis did a great job of saying, sometimes the tough questions, the tough conversations that we have to have. So we appreciate once again, your dedication to OSBA, because we do truly believe that the work that you do significantly influences the success of our students.
So I would just add, I want our community to understand the impact that our leadership provides. So I will be moving into my second year serving as the Central Region President. So the fact that we are on the Board of Trustees for the entire state, but we also have a leader that has, for a total of 2 years, leading our region is significant. Our voice is really front and center for not just Franklin County, but the 14 surrounding counties when we're dealing with our school board colleagues. And then also our president, President Adair, will take the leadership for the Black Caucus next year. That is significant and tremendous in that one, she is advocating and raising money for that scholarship throughout the entire state, but also looking at the equity issues as they relate to race and expanding it beyond just Black students, because we know that if Black students are affected, brown students are affected, all students are affected. So advancing that equity conversation across the state. And while our district hasn't highlighted that, I think it's important for our community to know the leadership role that both President Adair and I play with OSBA. I thank you all for coming in to give the presentation, and I look forward to the fruitful conversation that we'll have.
And it's probably worth sharing. I've been around for a while. I'm almost 40 years at OSBA and consider myself one of our historians. I can't remember another school board member who had the privilege, the opportunity, and made the sacrifices to serve 2 years as a region president in the Central Region. You know, maybe there's somebody in the 50s that I missed, but I think you're it, Dr. Pierce. So, you know, those for the people who think that being on a school board member is just going to a meeting once a month, they don't understand what it takes to do this job. And likewise, for those who are selected by their peers to serve at this level at the state, the additional evenings and weekends and travel and time and phone calls, I can't explain enough how much above and beyond effort that is. And time is something that none of us have enough of. I mean, anymore. It's a limited quantity. And I'm burning yours up tonight. But I just want to say thank you to Dr. Pierce, Dr. Adair for their service this past year, and to Ms. Reyes and Mr. Cole for your service in previous years. We're grateful. And we could not do what we do. We could not be as relevant as we are or as successful as we've been without individuals like you and your service. So, and again, I think our best days still lie ahead. So it's exciting times in spite of the challenges. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. I'm sorry we went so long, but I hope it was helpful to you. And if there are any other questions after tonight, no statute of limitations, call. I will leave a stack of cards here, and please, if you wouldn't mind distributing them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rick.
Board members, part of this discussion, as you heard, was about determining if we were going to attend the annual conference. Because this is a newer event, it was not contemplated when we did the initial calendar of our PD. So that is something we will have to consider. Registration is now open, and so we will need to determine if we will attend and then board that at the next meeting. So if you are interested after hearing, please let Misty know, and we will kind of figure out what that looks like and see who can go, and then we will board that at the next meeting. Dr. Pierce.
Just a quick question. If students are eligible to attend and present, I would like to recommend that maybe our superintendent ambassadors have the opportunity to present how they're engaging their peers in schools or how they're working with our administration to provide that student voice. So if we could also come with a proposal for potential boarding for a couple of those students if possible, I would definitely be open to hearing that.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and kind of continue the discussion on OSBA. If there's anything, Dr. Pierce, you would like to give us some updates on the Capitol Conference. In particular, I believe the Delegate Assembly was what was on this as well.
So I think the Delegate Assembly was very lively. There was a resolution to advance parental rights, and we were joined with a number of our colleagues in a range, a diversity of districts, so urban, suburban, and rural districts who were just interested in making sure that we kept that local control and advocated for and promoted districts' parental right policies that are already existing without expanding OSBA's legislative platform into that space and area. So that is, I would add that. I know two of my other colleagues, well, four, were very active in that as well. President Adair, yourself, Mr. Cole, as well as Board Member Brown were active in that. So if you want to add any additional comment.
Don't accept to say good job for those that helped make sure that issue was defeated and not become part of the platform.
I think it's really important, and it highlights what Dr. Pierce was saying about our leadership efforts in this. We were part of a coalition that I think will only strengthen as we move forward in this space where public education and those that want to change public education are becoming board members. And so we have an interesting dynamic here, and I know other states are facing this as well, and that legislative platform is important and critical. And I would say the last two delegate assemblies have been, we've seen how important it is to make sure that we not only have a strong voice, so thank you, Dr. Pierce, and thank you, Board Member Cole, for being our alternative in that space, but a coalition of like-minded. And so for us to advance our goals that we have for this district and our students, we must do that. We must stand with each other and make sure that the organizations that we are part of also reflect our values. So I want to thank all those that were involved in that. It was a big undertaking, and thanking all of the board members around us across the state that stood.
I just wanted to identify one of those that I'm particularly proud of because my daughter, Burl, who's president of the Gahanna Jefferson School Board, was also one of the very loud voices and helped to lead the effort on this front. So that's something that makes me proud all the time.
Board Member Beckerly.
I'm going to be a devil's advocate a little bit on this in the sense of, yes, I am grateful for our efforts in affecting the platform and making sure the platform that went forward was not one that was going to erode local control. But I'm wondering more about what is the track record, or how do we measure efficacy at the legislature? Like, does it matter? I mean, how effective is OSBA in influencing what's happening at the State House? Because my concern is that, and this is an example, is in a way, when we have so many disparate members in terms of rural, suburban, urban, and the commitment to be nonpartisan or purple, and some of the things that are so critical to us are our issues really being advocated for. And I mean, and the fact that we had to spend so much energy making sure that something that we didn't want to happen, that would hurt us, and we were successful, good, I'm grateful, but in a way, what's the bottom, whatever the outcomes we're ultimately getting? I mean, it's an outcomes question, I guess, and is it really serving us? I honestly have no idea. The answer could be heck yeah, because I'm not informed enough to know what that answer is, but I think that's a question worth asking. And I don't expect us to answer it tonight, but let's think about it.
I would just say, if we have the experts in the room, if they would like to come back and answer that question, as I don't
Maybe
wanna,
a follow-up, not now.
Yeah,
No.
They can answer that question for you, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to have that conversation, but let's put it.
I mean, it's the same question about our involvement with council. I mean, part of the problem
Council of
is,
Great City Schools.
yes,
Yeah.
they advocate at a federal level as well for us, and we are part of that. And part of it is just the structure of the political environment.
Yeah, like, is it reasonable for any of these organizations? The thing about council, though, is that it's similarly situated districts.
Well, so
Similarly
just out of conflict, so one, because I serve as Central Region President, there is a conflict of interest clause that I can't overwhelmingly champion us being engaged with OSBA, right? So I have to temper my remarks in this regard, understanding the position that I have there. But there is like-minded districts, and the more these issues come to the forefront, and there are challenges, not just on the legislative platform, but through the Ohio legislature that challenge the State Board of Education. As President Adair indicated and Board Member Brown shared, we are creating coalitions of like-minded board members, districts, staff members, teachers, and families. So it is actually providing us with that opportunity to create a grassroots swelling of community engagement around the issues that are important to public education. So without our engagement and our leadership in that, then we wouldn't be able to influence and impact how that power is flowing, how that engagement is happening.
Yeah, and I'm just asking, I'd like to know if we can somehow quantify that.
It's a valid.
But I think that makes sense. I mean, but, and I am really neutral on what the answer is. I have no idea.
I'm sure that we can get that information. All right, thank you all. We're going to go ahead and move into item 8.5, which is a continuation of our discussion on transportation. I first thank Dr. Pierce for providing everyone a document. I had that copied and it's in your folder outlining parts of our conversation as well as providing a Gantt chart. I went ahead and took that and took it with my notes and basically put it in a format that we could see so we could finish the conversation and then talk about next steps. So I'm going to kind of walk through this just like I did last time, just to level set us before we have the conversation. Members, I think you have this printed out too in your folder, again, along with Dr. Pierce's work, so you can look at both documents. They're meant to be viewed together. So we are going to, there we go. Just again, let's remind everyone, student outcomes won't change until adult behavior changes, and that starts with us. So we began this discussion last board meeting around the role of the board and policy in the transportation challenges that we experienced. The last time we were really looking at what is the root cause? What do we need to know or learn in order to make policy decisions? And so now taking, kind of the information that we talked about, we're kind of now looking at what are the gaps in that knowledge. So looking at what we know, what we identified, what else do we need to know? And then if we feel like we have enough information, how do we prioritize and begin the execution? And that's the second part of Dr. Pierce's document. She starts talking about execution. We might not have time tonight to talk about that. So this is a continued discussion, and we will continue to talk about that at the next board meeting. So I want to make sure, though, we kind of review what we discussed and have our administration listen. It's all of you, even all of you participating at home. So get ready to jump in if you need to. About what are we missing? What are we missing in the root cause analysis? And so I'm asking administration in this to listen and help us identify gaps, and then gather information so that you can help us begin to fill those gaps as we move into the next phase of our conversation. And then also gather information to begin to help us gather some recommendations so on how we prioritize and how we begin execution. And so again, we have a start through some work Dr. Pierce did, and so I want to build on that. But again, we probably won't have time tonight because I do want to kind of finish this up by 8 because we do have executive session. So this is, again, a continued conversation. So really quickly, these were the assumptions. I just snapshotted those on the paper. Dr. Pierce wrote all of them out, so you have that in front of you. But we made an assumption that this is a systemic problem, not an HR problem. This is a regional and national issue. Getting to school is foundational to our goals and guardrails. System challenges are not new, but we need innovation to improve our outcomes. We know external policy caused and keeps causing challenges. And to solve, we understand past policy, we understand our past policy, and be open to all ideas in making data-driven decisions for future policy. So those are our assumptions that we agreed on last time. So taking everything that we talked about, looking at the list, and I basically just took the questions posed from Dr. Pierce's and some of my notes, which mirrored almost exactly, and kind of categorized this into 5 big points. And I call these board policy points because these are the things that we control, right? And so this is how I outlined it, and then you'll see there's another slide that caught some other things that we discussed at the end. All right, so the first one is transportation and operation. So we have policy around that. And so the board has identified that its current policy on how transportation operates is a potential root cause to the current transportation challenge. Kind of a duh, right? But just to say it. And in our discussion, we identified a couple policy questions that we thought needed addressed. And so board members, what I'm asking is just one, a verification that this is what we had, and then as we go through this, what are we missing something? Team, are we missing something? What is the gap? We've already kind of identified some of the additional gaps in information that we needed through our discussion. So I've added that here too, and Dr. Pierce captured this as well on her list too. So in this area, it's, do we continue to use the 2-mile radius? And by the way, these are not in any order. This was just, I literally went down the list. So do we continue to use a yellow bus model? Do we use vans or other methods? Do we continue to transport grades 9 through 12? So those are some big policy questions we identified that have potential root cause implications to our transportation challenges. Some of the gaps and things we needed to know about those policy questions were how many students live within the 2 miles of their home? How can we leverage the Safe Paths Partnership more that already exists? How do we transport inter-district students? That's the students who are coming from or to other districts that we are required to transport. And then what is our 9 through 12 grade band transportation data? So looking at that in terms of equity and all the things that we kind of dug into. And again, Dr. Pierce, I kind of summarized these to make them shorter, but you can see the full questions that she put in the paper. So that's the first one. I don't know if you want to stop and talk about each one so we can fill in gaps. Yes. Okay, perfect. So we will stop on this one. Board members, team. What additional policy questions or what additional gaps for transportation and operation that we might not have identified in our first conversation? Dr. Pierce, then Board Member Beckerly.
So you also said, is this a good category breakdown? I would, so we know we're dealing with transportation. To me, it becomes a business and operations, right? We need to look at this as what is the business of transportation and how are we operating? So instead of transportation and operation, it needs to be, I'm suggesting business and operation. I think also the question that needs to be addressed are the information gap that exists is why is there a 2-mile radius? Are we legally required to have a 2-mile radius or did we create that 2-mile radius? What grade bands do the 2-mile radius apply to? That second part of do we continue to use yellow bus model or vans? I think in a larger category, we're getting to the question of how do we right size our transportation fleet? And that's why, again, this is a business and operations question. I don't think you can do the inter-district question without doing the intra-district question. You have to keep those together because both of those greatly impact our transportation. And then lastly, I think when we ask that last question, what is our 9 through 12 transportation data? We also have to put that in the context of how is our partnership with CODA impacting that data. So I know that 11th and 12th graders, I think, get the CODA bus passes. How many of our students are using those bus passes and as a result might impact that 9 through 12 transportation data that we're currently seeing?
Thank you. Board Member Beckerly, then Cole.
I'm trying to get all your categories, but I think if we're looking at transportation and operation, part of what we need to understand, which will help us determine our priorities, is the impact of certain decisions. So, for example, what is the impact on the stress, the pressure of transportation? Because I think you mentioned earlier on that this was a problem before. It's just gotten exacerbated. So there's certain things like we have it, consolidating and closing under-enrolled schools, does that have a significant impact on the demands of transportation, or is it a minor impact? If we were, because in my head I was thinking, well, maybe, if we bus 9th and 10th graders and don't bus 11th and 12th graders, would that reduce the demands of transportation, or wouldn't it? I don't know. I can imagine, but I think that we actually need that quantified. What's that impact of those things? What is the impact of not transporting open enrollment or lottery out of catchment areas, so that we understand kind of bang for the buck in the sense of reducing because we have control. There's external causes and the stresses of transportation, but there's internal causes, there's policy. We've heard our staff say more than a few times that transporting 45% of our kids significantly stresses transportation. So what things can we do in the short term? I'd like to talk about longer-term solutions too, but in the short term, what are the impacts so we have a sense of how to prioritize the decision-making that the board needs to make in order to facilitate that, or consider facilitating that?
Are we ready to move to the next one? We can go back, because these are all, first of all, they're all interconnected. So don't feel like we can't go back to one. Okay. All right, so the next one is around things that Board Member Beckerly has started on as well, and that's enrollment.
No, I was trying not to.
No, it's okay. It's interconnected. You can't separate them out. So the board has identified that its current policy on student enrollment is a potential root cause. Questions that we've identified that we need to consider. Do we continue to open enroll? Do we move to a neighborhood model? It's kind of either or, right? Or some hybrid of that. Gaps. What does open enrollment really mean? I think we don't understand that. Why are student families choosing to open, enroll, and select the schools they are? And then what would that look like per grade band? What would neighborhood models look like? Per specially programmed schools, special ed, EEL, and career tech, what would that look like if it was in a neighborhood model? And then how many students enroll inter-district? So what does that enrollment look like? And that kind of ties to the first question around the transportation of inter-district. So how many of that kids are impacted? All right, so I saw Dr. Pierce, then Board Member Vera, then Cole.
I actually was after Board Member Beckerly.
Oh, you had your hand up on the first one?
Not for the first one, but I was going to chime in on this. But I did have my hand up after.
Okay. It's okay, guys. It's all right. So we will have Board Member Cole go. And then, I don't know, put your hands up again, because I mean,
it doesn't matter to me.
Then Beckerly, then
Vera.
Vera.
I have to write it down, sorry.
Down this way. There we go.
Okay, Vera, Cole, Pierce, Brown.
Beckerly was in there too, right?
We'll just go start that way.
Yes.
Guys,
From
it's getting
that way,
late.
and then
All the way down.
Board Member Vera, go ahead.
All right, just really quickly. To Dr. Pierce's point earlier, it made me think about the business aspect of it. So really also gathering the information, how would it fiscally impact us to move away from open enrollment or move away from, taking, because there is a dollar amount. And so I think we need to look at, it might fix one problem, but will it cause another problem? So what are the fiscal ramifications in these specific areas?
I'm going to add that to the funding slide and just kind of say fiscal impact of the other categories. Board Member Beckerly, you're next.
Just one thought about, it seems to me, is understanding if we were to take some of our specialty programs and limit the busing across the city for that stuff, are there some that can be replicated more easily than others? Like if we have an Indianola informal in the Northwest, could we put one in the Southeast at the same, with fairly little, not a huge impact, not hard to replicate, that we could replicate that in two places, because if that can be done with only some minor tweaking, we can, preserve access to that to more students, that are located there and not. So I think that should be feasibility of replicating programs.
I'm going to add that to the educational experiences.
I'm sorry.
No,
okay.
I didn't say them all, so it's okay.
No, it's all right. Okay, but
where
yes.
we talk about exploring the structure of curriculum and the school day as part of the solution.
And you're right, they are so interrelated, all of it. They really are.
But
it's all interrelated.
Yeah.
That's what's so hard about it.
But I think what she's getting at here is that when we look at how many students enroll in inter-district, and again, with this one, I think we need to do intra-district. Whenever we do inter, we also need to do intra at the same time. We have to contextualize it in those programs. And so I think that's why I agree with that one, kept it in that vein, in that slide.
So replication of the programs based on enrollment.
Based on, I don't know if our data is, Dr. Brown might be able to do that, but I would do a historical analysis on the enrollment and look at the trends that we have for particular programs. Because,
So why?
and I'll wait.
Why?
You want to add your comment, because we were over here talking about,
So
but
why students are choosing to enroll in
Because
programs?
my question was, how many are we going to lose if we go to the other model, right? So, yeah, so we were doing a little sidebar.
So, yeah, well, if we move to the neighborhood model, how many students will we then lose with enrollment?
Or will we?
Right.
Maybe we don't.
But,
But if we do what you're saying, we might not.
And I would say even before we worry about losing them, just making sure that there's still access to it.
Okay. So what would the impact to enrollment and access be if we switch to a neighborhood model coupled with then the more detailed replacement of programs or replication of programs when we get to the educational experience question?
It's
I know, I just want to make sure I capture that. Okay, Board Member Cole.
Thank you. I like where it's highlighted, particularly in the educational experience, and I definitely want to make sure we lifted this out. It's cited as an example, but I think it's really core important. The idea of attendance. So when you think of the paradigm of how we actually count and quantify a student day based on hours, and the hours that could be lost or the hour that could be lost because of a late student and attendance and that impact, I think it's incumbent of us to really take a serious look at what the learning loss impact of attendance, being late, is on a student. And if there are any punitive aspects of that that are attached to that. I know the state does not acknowledge a late bus, a tardy bus, as an excuse for late attendance. So this then also turns in not only to a learning loss situation, but also possibly even to a punitive situation. I think it's really incumbent of us to look at the impact on a child's learning experience with those two things working together. I appreciated it being highlighted in here as an example, but I think it requires further illumination. To what you guys were just discussing about the neighborhood aspect of things, here's the other challenge that the administration needs to take into very serious consideration. What is the demographic of that particular area? So if you're like my kids whose homeschool would have been, were it not for open enrollment, would have been initially Benz Elementary and maybe Westmore and then West, or when we moved to the far east, would have been Old Orchard, then what's our, say,
Franklin.
no.
York.
Thank you. York, and then Walnut Ridge. But what do these students need to actually have? How do we quantify and qualify students in a given area for specific need? So if you're talking about equity, if you're talking about what a student base needs, how many of these students live in that area may be handicapped, may be gifted and talented, may be have a curriculum interest in something specific where we could expand CTE. So there's certain things that really have to go a deep dive into considering how we really make the local school model work. How do we defeat the history of open enrollment? How do we change that whole paradigm? It's older than I am. This issue is really almost older than me in this city in terms of open enrollment. It literally is. So it's just something to consider as we think about how to expand this and do it equitably.
Okay. And it would be students with disabilities, just to
Thank you.
ensure that you is correct.
Yeah, I know.
That's okay, we all learn.
I'm old, that's all.
I'm going to add some of those pieces to the category that Nicole was in around educational experiences, but also student enrollment, just understanding more demographic data. And then I popped it over also into just other thoughts about how do we, or the district, help meet that mindset shift change that their community is going to need as well. So added some notes there. Okay, over here. Vice President Reyes.
Yes, so I was, and I don't know if that, I was gonna go back to supply, so in the transportation, the business and transportation, and I don't know where this goes, supply issues, timeline, you know, as we're talking about, yellow buses versus vans versus et cetera, et cetera. I know that that has been some challenges, not only to us, but nationally, on whether we'll be able to get some of these,
So maybe we change funding to funding and resources, which.
Thinking allocation, the allocations.
Yeah, it's all money, it's all the, yeah, so put the supply chain, supply issues, that's what you're hitting right there.
yeah, supply chain issues. I believe there, or how do, at some point, we're gonna have to discuss how do we shift if there's a high impact? You know, so what are our decision points to say, as, you know, as we're discussing here, there was a reason at that time why they did that decision. There's gonna be a reason why we're doing this decision. You know, we're going back to an old system. Is that gonna make a difference? When I heard surplus drivers, I about fell out of my chair. So, you know, so what are those decisions things?
They're not really surplus, it's just.
I know,
we
I
could
know.
actually
We're
run
gonna
a
be
field
using
trip
them.
or
I know.
something, right?
And, President Dare, in the per specialty program schools, is that where we're including immersion schools?
Yes.
So language schools, okay. So I didn't know whether we needed to call it out or not.
I can put that there.
And then this brings me back when you're talking about enrollment, and equity, diversity, integration, bus integration. How, you know, what will that, how will us going to a different model impact our students, certain students going to a certain neighborhood and certain students going to another, to put it lightly. So as we make these decisions, and we continue to talk about equity and exposure to our students, we know there's certain parts of our city who have high poverty and high, and certain populations living in those areas. So I don't know where that.
So that was a hard one. So equity, I put in my first set of notes that it's just a lens over
Yeah.
everything. And so I started to put it in every slide, but I didn't have room. So
And I don't know if it's equity as much as
the lens of
the
it.
is integration, right? So
Diversity, inclusion.
that's why busing happened, because you wanted to break up, you wanted to expand opportunities for different neighborhoods. So I don't know if it's equity and diversity or is integration. So, yeah.
All of it.
Those, yeah.
Dr. Pierce, I think we're kind of going everywhere, so that's fine.
I'll just keep us on the enrollment, student enrollment. Do we move to the neighborhood model? I think one of the gaps that we need information on relates to our enrollment and capacity for buildings. So that connects to our FMP process. If you're in Clintonville, for example, and you're at Clinton Elementary and you don't have enough space for all your third graders or all your kindergartners in the neighborhood to attend, then how does that impact what buildings we go back and reopen if we still own like Glenmont or something like that, right? And if you're in a neighborhood where you might have a lower enrollment, you know, then do you start to offer different programs and different grade bands in certain buildings? Do you have, you know, the K through 12 model where they're in one of our bigger, nicer buildings and it's the entire grade band there from K through 12, right? So I think when it comes to a neighborhood model, we have to be thoughtful about how that aligns with the trends we're seeing in the region. And then also, as Board Member Coe said, how we're defeating the issue of open enrollment. Right, so those neighborhood associations that are encouraging people to stay in their neighborhood schools.
So I'm adding those thoughts to that slide, but also the next one regarding your facility capacity and grade band modeling over in the next page for building and real estate too. All right, Doctor, Mr. Brown, Judge Brown.
He'll answer to that title.
Doctor of Law.
I'll respond to any.
Red over there, he getting happy.
The main thought I had was about technology. Technology is a big factor that can affect, influence, help solve, or alleviate many of these categories. I don't know where to fit it in, but I think it deserves mention because it can be helpful in a variety of ways. But we also have to make sure that it makes sense. If we want to eliminate or reduce open enrollment, there are some ways technology can help that. If we want to do more inter-district, we can do some of that without transportation, or even, for that matter, international. But I think that where technology fits and how it fits while maintaining high-quality education is worthy of inclusion.
I'm going to add that to the educational experience as well, just an overall and the other. It was part of the discussion. Dr. Pierce had it in hers. I didn't quite fit it in this, but I was trying to capture that when talking about the structure of the curriculum. That was something we talked about. Could we do more virtual experiences and different types of curriculum so it would eliminate
There's a lot of ways where we really don't like the use of technology, but there are lots and lots of ways where it could enhance.
Okay, I'm going to go to the next one, which is around building and real estate. So the policy questions last time we kind of identified were around is viability of our segment 4 and 5, and more specifically what properties are in 5, and then also what is our district's land use plan just for the entire district. We also talked about, do we realign and grow learning communities regardless of FMP for the 2023-24 or 24-25 school years? So do we start making those moves regardless of what we do with FMP? And some of the gaps we needed information, I already mentioned the one about segment 5. What is our data around the regional approach that we're currently using? Is it working? What's our return on that? And then what is our OPSI data telling us? I also added, through your notes, I added not just future growth of like population, but demographics of population. And then we have what is the facility capacity, and then what would grade band modeling look like through building structure and real estate as well in this section. What are we missing here? Board Member Beckerly.
I think that, I don't know if it's missing, but I kind of would like to tease it out a bit. The segment 4 and 5, spelling that out. And then I think when you're saying growing learning communities regardless of FMP, there might actually be certain communities, certain consolidations, certain teasing of buildings and programs consistent with the other stuff we've been talking about that wouldn't necessarily impact FMP. So it doesn't need to be regardless. It might be like, can we identify some things that sort of have to happen anyway or could happen anyway that aren't going to derail that plan if that plan's still viable? Because I think that I keep coming back to all of these systemic things need to happen, but are there some quick things we could do? And so I think that we need to keep asking what are the quick things that would have high impact independent of these other larger things. Like short term.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to, so I didn't apparently write it clear, so I'll clear that up. But that's exactly what that second one was supposed to be.
All right, sorry.
No, it's fine. All right, other thoughts on buildings and real estate, other gaps, other policy decisions we need to think about?
I just think that gaps in information that we may need is, even when we're thinking about the district's land use plan, one of the things and information we may need to know is what are state regulations in regard to our building use plan, right? So if a building goes empty for so long, then we know that our charter schools get first access to that. I'm a huge advocate of us keeping our land. That is one of the greatest resources that we have. So if we need to think about tearing buildings down and keeping and leasing land, then we need to look into that information as well, because that also can start to bring money in for us, business and operations.
All right, I've captured that on this.
And President Dare, so I know that Morpsey talks about movement of people, census, things like that. Some of the things that have impacted the district in the past is all of a sudden a legislative decision is made to add more apartments at a certain area that are so-called single family, but we all know end up being multifamily. So I don't know if here who we should be having conversations with, but that would be information that we would need.
More data.
Yeah, more data
More
from.
data resourcing. Like
I don't know if it's builders or actually other, people that do multi-use would be our council, right? So, so we would need to gather some of that information, because that does impact.
Well, and also from like the business partners too, because they know where they're bringing in industry, which would then generate housing.
Yeah, because now everyone's running around with Intel, right? So.
Yeah. And to Vice President Reyes' point, figuring out like what is, what is the bigger plan for the city of Columbus as it relates to housing. And so conversations with other elected offices that, are part of developing our infrastructure, because oftentimes they don't think about how that affects, our district. So figuring out, are there any big plans coming up in the near future that we should be made aware of as it relates to housing and development?
Like Franklinton, all of a sudden, that didn't exist several years ago.
And I don't want to make it sound like we aren't doing these things, but
Right.
what we aren't doing is it in a structured way, right, to solve a root cause problem. And so where everyone knows what the plan strategy is, and that will be the next step. So, we are having these conversations, and it's just about aligning things and then capturing our own metrics of accountability for it. So, all right, any other thing on building and real estate? Remember, we can come back to these. So the next one, is funding. So the questions that we identified were, are we really resourcing the transportation department fully? Do they have enough resources? A gap question similar would be, what other departments are connected to this issue in terms of kind of that holistic approach to the district? Are they resourced properly? Whoever they are, which, we can kind of guess, but we haven't identified. Do we want to explore partnerships to help with cost of transportation? And we already have some. CODA, city, community, those ideas came up. What is our return on investment with current partners? What are our partnership gaps? Are things we might need to know. Additional policy question, do we have enough funds to address the root cause? Like whatever we then decide is the priorities, are we gonna have enough funds? How do we get those funds? And then that would mean, what is the timing of our ballot initiatives? And then we have added to this in our discussion, what is then the fiscal impact when we start to tweak the other categories? What does that then look like on the budget side? And then we added issues around supply chain and purchasing of resources. All right, I see Vice President Reyes, and then,
So I don't know exactly where this question is, and this is an issue that we've had, even when we have partnership with CODAs or so forth, is usage, why somebody would use that partner or not. So I think the district has looked at CODA multiple years, but we're not like a Chicago or a New York or like other areas where parents, students feel comfortable writing CODA yet. So perhaps I don't know if it's the gap is I don't know if it's an issue of partner or whether it's an issue of, CODA is a great partner, right? We've done all the things, but will people use that partner? So I don't know if that goes.
I'm gonna put that in other, That's actually something we've talked about with
Yeah,
Canada.
exactly. I mean,
So,
because we've had it, yeah. We don't need to go by the issues, but yeah.
anyone else have anything to add? We've already added some things here to this. All right, let's go to the next one, which is we added some things here too. This is educational experience of our students. Our current policy on the structure and expectations of the educational experience is a potential root cause. We need to consider more advocacy around transportation on external challenges. We mentioned attendance, charter non-public, other types of policy that Dr. Pierce mentions. These rules that are imposed on us. What do we need to do to advocate if we need to? And then do we need to explore the structure of curriculum and the school day as part of the solution? This would be around start times, end times. I kind of threw everything in this category. Virtual curriculum, opportunity for students to go to externships, all sorts of things that we talked about in that. That's actually a lot of admin stuff in that category right there too. We added looking at internal policy as well, not just external partners. I did add that on the first one, around learning loss and being punitive when transportation is a problem. How are we don't want to also be part of that barrier and problem in that structure. Gaps, this kind of goes back to what Ramona was saying a little bit. What are the return on investment for current partners? You know what, I think I didn't delete that one when I did a copy. I don't think that one actually goes there, sorry. And then how do we use that? How do we apply the equity lens? What are the extras that are being impacted by our current educational experiences and expectations? We want all our students to do all these things, but we aren't able to do it. And so if we want those things, how do we then, and then that fits into the other categories of funding or advocacy or whatever. So that's what we talked about here, and we added a couple things here. And I have to delete that first one, that's my fault. What are the RIs? That was for the last one. I copied the slide. Other things around student experience that we think we need to know, or policy questions the board needs to address. Okay, and then the other thoughts were just things that were captured that could be more admin. It might be kind of a side thing. It might fit in a category. Maybe I just wasn't looking at it the way you said it when we wrote it down, so you could advocate for it to be moved in. But things like, how is the district ensuring authentic engagement, communication, student voice in the solution? How is the district ensuring safe bus stop assignment? How do we better assist EL families with transportation needs? How are we learning from our community students and families in this process? What data are we collecting? How can we improve special education transportation? Should we consider driver's education curriculum? And then I have questions we've added about shifting mindset, looking at technology, and CODA's perception issues. This was meant to kind of be a catch because I wasn't sure how these things really fit in our board work, but are important concepts that we want to consider. Dr. Pierce.
So I think in that important concept, one of the categories that I would recommend we put in here is governance. And under that governance category, we explicitly call out policy 5113.01, 5113, 7105, 5200.1. And then I would also add that element around safe bus stop assignments, I recommend that our board take a proactive approach and actually make a policy around what we define as safe bus stops.
That's a good idea. We'll add a category around the list of policies which you outlined, and that's actually could be part of a policy. So okay, done. Yes. All right, so that's a lot. We added more. So I want to give the staff time they just heard that. What are we missing? What are we not thinking about? And remember, this is about what the board is responsible for. You could tell us. Can you say, hey, that's great. That seems more like an admin thing. I want to hear your feedback on this. What are some gaps? What are some other things around root cause that you think we might have missed? I'm going to just open the floor. Dr. James, I see you grab the mic.
Yeah, so I want to make sure that we understand, as a Board of Education, we are creatures of statute. And so for every single board policy that we have, there is an Ohio Revised Code section that dictates what we can do. And we need to figure out, we just talked about advocacy. We need to figure out some workarounds for some of those. Some things aren't going to change. The yellow school bus, in terms of transportation, won't. Vans are limited to special needs, and they can be done for field trips and athletic teams. And the 2-mile radius thing from, K to 8, is basically state law. But there are some other flexibilities that we have with 9 through 12, inter and intra-district open enrollment. So we're trying to do a matrix of understanding how the Ohio Revised Code interacts with our board policies.
That would be really helpful.
The other thing, that comes to mind is, so we have all of these different initiatives going on. We have and they're all good, but we need to really form, a vision for what the district curriculum should be driving everything else that we're doing. And it's difficult, because, a facility master plan it's just building buildings, but what's important is getting input from our educators, our students and families, and what they want to see in them. And then all of the data, so one of our recommendations, later on under the consent agenda is getting some additional expertise to help look at data, and they can help tell us where some of those trends are because they have access to the MORPC data and some of the data regarding growth of our population, and really trying to look at the district maybe through a different lens in terms of population clusters. And I think it was Board Member Cole who talked, or someone, about some of the demographic aspects of those populations, so we can modify what we're going to provide in those neighborhoods.
Other thoughts, team?
I would just add 2 pieces. One, that under education experiences, the WHO opening up to more pre-K students, expanding early learning, and what that will look like for transporting those students if we're going to open that up. We have partnerships with that, but do we want more of that experience pre-K through 12 throughout the district? And then under education and flexibility, how flexible do we want to offer opportunities for students? So we talked a little bit, we've extended our online options. Does the entire education experience need to happen in our buildings, on our campuses? So how flexible do we need to allow that for students, and what does our policy say? Do you have to attend 2 classes, 3 classes?
Do we have to lay eyes on you once or twice?
Right. And so really thinking out of the box, because we talked about technology, right? So we can really advance technology and not think about the experiences happening in bricks and mortar as we see it today.
Dr. Dixon, as you mentioned that, I just think about our pre-K teachers and all the wonderful challenges they face in meeting those step up to quality stars and everything. So that would also could that potentially impact our classroom structure, our building structure? Do they need to have restrooms within a certain distance?
Yes, but it also increased the partnership with other partners who educate pre-K students too. And just think about, just for example, we have Head Starts in our buildings. What does that look like to really think about we talked about the structure and the curriculum, going to a different grade banding, and really partnership with other entities to get more students who may not have the opportunity to be educated in our buildings. And still do it in a way that it still honors your private sectors, et cetera. And I think that was part of what Future Ready was really, they are working on, that whole Birth to 5, but it really can open up even more doors for our students too, just kind of thinking outside the box. I think there's some opportunities because it'll impact your budgets, et cetera, because to your point, those students will need something different. How will we transport? There may be a cost to the district or to families, so we really need to think about that. That was a couple things I think that come to mind.
I've added the pre-K kind of across the board where it fits in for each of the categories, and early learning, educational experiences.
Because pre-K is a cost to the district, but it's something that it's an investment, I should say. Right. It's an investment, I should say. It's an investment to the district and to the community because we are capturing our learners early.
Dr. Walker's hand is up.
Dr. Walker. Thank you.
Good evening. I just want to concur with Dr. James. I think one of the things that I heard him say was talking about the sort of the integrated process that this is going to implicate for our district, particularly as it relates to curriculum. I think one of the things that we can do, in that we've had some discussions on this in cabinet and with chiefs, is looking at demand across our programs where we typically have had waiting lists. That can oftentimes be an indicator of where we might be able to expand programming. But I think it's also going to be a significant consideration as we're thinking about this, whether it's breaking the district up into quadrants to look at sort of narrowing the scope of where we're transporting students, to be thinking about what the on-ramp is going to be for the duplication of these programs, because some of these programs have had significant history in our district, and one I'm just thinking about offhand is COS, and that program didn't just become that way overnight. It was built over time, and so as we start thinking about that, I think that having those conversations concurrently and simultaneously will help us to be more effective in a more integrated plan that addresses multiple issues at once.
Thank you, Dr. Walker.
Ooh, Can I?
Board Member Beckerly. I didn't know if there's anybody else. I was waiting for him to come off the.
I just wanted to make sure we're clear on process. I'm a little concerned that
These are kind of side-by-side processes now. So, because they're talking about their work and what they need to do, right? And that's really great. We need to be aware of that because we impact that, obviously. And so, but it is really important that we stay in our lane and they stay in their lane, but we got to be talking all the way.
Yeah, I don't think that wasn't where I was going.
Oh, well, I think the next, and really the next step from here is to figure out what then the priority steps are, because obviously we cannot do everything on this.
Yes.
So
If I could suggest that, I think what you were getting at, Board Member Beckerly, is I think what we've done here is reported back to the community that we shared at the table some of the policies and how our work is impacting administration's work and what we can do. I think in terms of processes, that we go to the fuller notes that were captured and really define what those priorities are, if they're long-term, short-term, and to have administration fill those gaps more in. So we as a team can collectively look at it and not in this shorthand.
right, yes. So we're gonna. That will be the next step of our.
So what are we asking the administration to do as a result of this? Are we asking them to go answer all those questions?
No.
Okay,
No.
that's what I want to make clear.
No, I think the questions are captured. So one, we have a record of the questions that were posed. I think that's important to capture. The guiding question, the assumptions, the questions that are underneath it. But I think when you get to the chart, then it's for the administration to go through and add those gaps, right? Here's what's missing, and to, again, identify who those assigned individuals are, because I think it's key for us to understand if it's a curriculum and instruction, if it's business and operations, where can we kind of house this conversation? Also on our end, is it a board, is it policy, advocacy, and governance? Did I get it right?
Yeah.
Awesome. And then defining that timeline. So I think there's two steps that need to happen. We need to give it to our administration, let them mull it over, marinate with it, add to the document, then it comes back to us for the conversation to continue.
I just want to toss out something, because I think part of what this discussion and this detailed-oriented question is doing is it's signaling to the administration and the community that we want to solve this systemically, and we want to think really detailed about it, and that's our expectation, and I think that's really good. I almost feel like, having established that as where we're coming from, our mindset, we almost need to ask the administration to say, well, these are the, near-term things, these are the short-term things, these are the, I just don't want anybody to think they have to go answer all these questions at once. And then if that's not what we're asking them to do, what are we asking them to do?
So that's what Dr. Pierce was saying. So that's
Right.
what she started to do on the chart. I just wanted to make sure before that we had a complete list, right? And we had the input of our team. And I want them to still have time to give input, because we did not hear from
Okay,
all
fair
of those people,
All right.
because they all have things that really impact this. And
Right.
then,
Didn't think about this, or what about that?
yeah, and
Okay,
then
good.
talk about, and then add to the list that Dr. Pierce started here about, and then the next step would be, how do we divide it up and conquer after things are prioritized? Who's doing what work in what way?
So continuing the discussion?
No, not continuing
Not now.
discussion. To have the team go back and look at it. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm pushing buttons. Don't put that on the screen, guys, that was an accident. Have the team go back and look at what we've done and listen to this conversation, right? Make sure we didn't miss anything. Because there was a lot of people we did not hear from, right? A lot of perspectives we didn't hear from. Then we, as the board, need to I want each of you to go back, as Dr. Pierce did, and think about long and short term. And I need each of you to do that. Like, we can't just have one person do our homework, right? This goes back to homework, right? Because I'm not sure I 100% agree with all the stuff that Dr. Pierce wrote, and that's okay, right? So we all need to kind of take the time to do that. And then once we have kind of collectively thought about what we think is long, short, and the team needs to do that too, because we need to align. We need to then figure out, in the short term, what do we do? What are the top priorities? And then the long term, what are we working towards, right? And so that's kind of the way I'm thinking about it moving forward. So the next board meeting, I would like to have this short, long-term discussion.
And whatever additional input we didn't get already.
Yeah.
All right, I like that.
President Adair, where would you like us to input our short-term, long-term, like our recommendations? I know there was a document, but how do you want us to submit that to you in advance, or is this something we just need to be prepared to talk about? How do you want us to categorize this?
If you want to submit it in advance, because then we can implement it in whatever we're showing on the screen instead of making notes, that would be great. I'll put together a Google document or something. Vice President Reyes.
Just wondering, we were having a little side discussion, if we're going to continue to build this, whether we need a separate, and you have it in one of your, in your others, aside about engagement. So the engagement would be engagement with parents, engagement with political persons, or whatever, those other conversations. I don't know, and it doesn't have to be changed, but whether engagement needs to be pulled out into its own separate slide, it will continue to utilize this structure. So
We can, if we want to highlight things like categories the board knows it needs to engage in. We've been doing it. Like I
Right.
said, we just haven't
Right.
been listing it. And then also, we're going to, in the next meeting, talk more about the advocacy part of GPAC and figuring out how it aligns to what our needs are. So that's a perfect segue, too, I think, to put some of that into that committee as well. Don't you think? Board Member Brown? That's what we just talked about. Okay.
Yes.
I know, it's late. Okay. All right, so that's the plan going forward. Thank you for that discussion. I will update that with notes and circulate, and you all can update as well. So we have the document.
So which document are we updating?
This is Dr. Pierce's work. This is our board work right now. I want everyone to do this exercise that Dr. Pierce did, right? That's what I'm asking our board to do. To go through yourself and look at our questions, and you decide what you think is short and long term. And then we're gonna put that together, because you were having a side conversation. I was saying, I am not sure I 100% agree with your categorization, which is totally fine. Right?
No, I heard that
We
100%.
need to talk about it.
I chuckled when you said it. I got you.
So we need
I
to
felt
talk
you.
about it, but I want everyone to do the exercise. And then.
Could I just add that we not lose what Board Member Beckerly said? So that there's flexibility in the short term and long term. The near term, what are you currently working on that's near completion? So the addition of that additional operationalization, conceptualization of timeline would be great.
Yeah, that's true. And the board is actually working some of this stuff too. So all of that is very relevant. So what are we working on now that's near complete? What's our short term? And then what will be long term? And this is going to be hard because it's interconnected. So, all right. Thank you. This is new and different, you guys. This is a new and different way to approach. So we're working through it. Okay. We have two, we're going to go to item 9, public hearing on reemployment of retired employees. We have 2 hearings tonight. The first is public hearing on reemployment of retired employee Paul T. Lausch. We do not have anyone here to speak on that, so that hearing is over. The second is public hearing on reemployment of retired employee Juanita S. Moore Williams. We did not have anyone signed up to speak on this hearing, so that hearing is now over. All right, so now we are into our consent agenda. This evening, our consent agenda consists of items 11.1 to 26.3. Are there any items a board member wishes to pull from the agenda to talk about, vote separately? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Are there any items that you would like to discuss? I would like to just quickly discuss item 19.2. I know Mr. Tennant left, but he had worked really hard on the monument sign for Afrocentric. And if you are looking in board documents, that there's a model of that sign. And I know that he was very excited. He talked to board members when he was here. He's been working on this for a long time. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and thank him for all of his work and dedication to our students and the concept of what Afrocentric early college education is. Other ones? All right, seeing none, please call the roll.
Dr. Pierce.
With the exception of 14.2, which I am abstaining from, yes.
Vice President Reyes.
Yes.
Ms. Vera.
Yes.
President Adair.
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Cole.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We have no one signed up for public comment on non-agenda items, so the next item on our agenda is executive session. Vice President Reyes, you have the motion.
I move that the Board of Education recess into executive session per section 121.22G1 of the Ohio Revised Code to consider the appointment, employment, or compensation of public employees.
The motion, is there a second? Please call the roll.
Vice President Reyes.
Yes.
Ms. Vera.
Yes.
President Adair.
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Cole.
Yes.
Dr. Pierce.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We will now adjourn into executive session. That will conclude the public portion of the televised portion, of our meeting. Thank you to our staff who have attended. We will see you later. We will adjourn this meeting back here in this room in public session where completed. Thank you.